Hi, this is Jackie Chin, and you're here with another edition of Zombie Palooza Radio. Tonight, we're going to be talking with authors who have created horror stories for the anthology The Voices Within, and it is created by Stitch Smile Publications. We're looking for Mark Deloy, and I'm sending a Facebook message to him with hopefully the link, and he'll be able to see that so we can bring him on and get this party started. And click that link, please. The Voices Within anthology is being produced and is already live on the Amazon.com. Very cool book. It's got 22 authors, some of the most incredibly disturbing dark horror on the planet is found within that book, and you are not going to be disappointed when you pick up a copy of it and read it. So very, very excited for the authors that are going to be on tonight. We are looking for Mark Deloy. And I did do a full hour of Zombie Palooza Radio beforehand, and part of the reason why this is going to be coming in two pieces is because we were not sure that it was recording or not. So if in fact it has not recorded, we need to make sure that people that come onto the show are using Google Chrome browser, as all of this is based on the Google platform. So Mark Deloy has a piece within The Voices Within. It's called The Cult of the Angel Eaters, and it has been picked for The Voices Within horror anthology produced by Stitch Smile Publications. I have no idea where Mark is. Live streaming is awesome. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to go and send for Lisa Vasquez. She is the CEO of this particular company, Stitch Smile Publications, and she also has a work that is in here. It's called Janie's Got a Gun. So we're going to see if we can get Lisa in and get this party started. I don't know, my Dead Door William is not going to be available for a while for us, and so you know, we're kind of like flying by the seat of our pants right now. Hello, Lisa Vasquez. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm doing. I found out what's going on with Mark. Their power went out from a really bad storm. So, you know, that's I see you're able to be outside. That's cool. That's cool. All right. So Mark is trying to get on via his phone. You need to have Google Hangouts on the phone. Google Hangouts. Hang on for a second. Lisa, why don't you tell people about your background as an author who writes in horror first while I'm trying to get Mark.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I started out writing probably in about the 4th grade, and then I decided I have a bunch of friends that write horror as well, and we decided that at a young age we were going to start writing. We wrote short stories for our teacher, and then as I grew older, I'm going to turn myself a nerd here. So all my nerdy role players out there, I role played for a really long time. I was on AOL and Yahoo, and we did a lot of live action, I guess, like chat room role play, and that really helped with practicing and getting ideas together. You're on the fly, so it's sort of improv. You're doing it with other people live. I guess you would call it live action. So we do it simultaneously. I write something, they write something back, and that got me into also doing the web pages and everything, because everybody had a web page for their character. And so I decided maybe I should do this and actually put a book out, because people had told me, you should write a book. And I said, well, I've been working on one kind of here and there, and I decided I was going to go ahead and do it. And the character that I started with was Isabel, and she is a live person, real person. Well, she's not alive anymore, but she's a real life person, and it was a lot of research to do that. So that it took me about 10 years total to complete my first book. But once I did it, it's all downhill from there. I'm addicted, and so there we go.
You decided to have your hand in creating a publishing company based in the horror genre. What made you go there?
Well, horror genre is it's hard to push out there. A lot of times you're going to get a mixed or a hybrid genre, which would be maybe like dystopian, which has now become its own kind of genre. But you also get dark romance, paranormal romance, and these can, or even just paranormal, and these can kind of, pull from the horror genre, but they're really nothing that was pure horror in Texas where I was. And I thought that was really odd, because you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you have, a huge goth community out here that loves vampires and are very, very dedicated and loyal to the horror genre. So I thought, well, what the heck is going on here? And, I grew up watching horror movies with my father, and he passed away in 2000, and I just decided, what, this was something we loved to do, and we bonded over this a lot. And so I decided, what, I want to help people that are in this genre, get their footing, and to really bring back the storytelling of horror. And there's Mark. Yay!
Hey, I'm outside on the porch.
Yay!
So Lisa's outside too. So just come on and pull up a chair, and have a little discussion here about Mark Deloy is one of the authors that has had his work picked for the Voices Within, the anthology that Stitch Smile Publications has put together, and the name of his piece is Cult of the Angel Eaters. Now, we're going to have a unique view here, because I've got the CEO of this particular project on, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Mark, and I'm going to ask you some questions about this particular work. And so the first question, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you on the big screen. There you go. All right, so what was going on in your life at the time that you conceived this piece, Cult of the Angel Eaters?
Wow.
I think his feed stopped. He's like, I'm going to take a picture of him looking like that on my camera. He's like,
It's a very thoughtful look. Very thoughtful look.
Mark, I know it's deep. This book has been, people have said that this book is one of the most truly disturbing works that they have seen in a very, very long time. So what I need for Mark to do, if I boot him out of here, he's not going to be able to get back in. So he's going to have to figure out that his feed is froze, and that he's going to have to try and come back in again. But in the meantime, I'm going to have some fun, and I'm going to take a picture. There it is for everybody. I'm going to message him over on the Facebook. Okay, so maybe usually this stuff happens when I bring on paranormal people. And that's part of the reason why I don't do that anymore. And, you know, hi.
Oh, there he goes.
I'm back.
You are now I have a picture of you with your mouth going. Like,
Yeah, I bet you do. Yeah,
I
my
do.
phone completely rebooted. I thought we had an EMP and it took down the whole power grid.
No, hell, don't you say that. That's bad. Bad boy. Speaking of, all right, so what was going on in your life when you got to the concept of Cult of the Angel Eaters?
The Angel Eaters. Well, I think at that time I was actually going through a really bad divorce. And I was also having kind of like a crisis of faith. I grew up in a Pentecostal church, and it just got to the point where I was just questioning everything about my life, how everything worked. So I was kind of in a really dark place, and I had never written anything quite that dark before. So it just got to the point where I wanted to write something a little bit different from what I normally did, which was more paranormal, just straight up ghost stories.
See, I told you. I knew that paranormal was going to sneak in there somewhere.
Yep.
I know now what happened. All right, so when you draw from personal experience, and you go and you start to put it out on paper, sometimes people who have personal experiences that are really rock solid to the basement, that kill them to the core of who they are, they can't sit down and write about it, because for them it's like going through all of that all over again, because your mind, when it sees like a video or it sees or reads something, doesn't really get the concept that that's not happening right now.
Right. I kind of look at it a little bit different. Writing for me has always been therapy. So if I can kind of take that darkness that's going on in my life and put it to paper, it helps me cope with what I'm going through. Cult of the Angel Eaters is really a prologue to a prologue of the novel that I'm working on right now. I'm about 100 pages into it. But it's kind of a different story, and it's something that takes the reader in an entirely different direction that I think they've ever been in. And I'm hoping that the novel does this as well. You can't really even fit it into a genre. It's something completely different.
That I have talked with many creatives about the fact that I think there is a necessity for everything to evolve. You know, certain things can be done to a particular point, and then there has to come something out of all of this so that it doesn't look like a rehashing of everything else that is out there. And it is by, I believe, personal experiences where that difference comes from.
Right. That's very, very true. I think the zombie genre has been done to death, but I think when you get something like, you know, Jeff Brown's story, Dredging Up Memories, you get something completely different that bends that genre, and then you can go in a totally different direction.
There has to be something at the infancy of the piece to be able to spark the allowance for people who are consuming this to be able to go, that aching back there at the back of my brain is making me sick to my stomach, because I really am starting to feel something, not quite clear what that is, but that it's going to spew out eventually. And it's either going to be something that's really amazing and just grabs you, or it's going to be something like, really, what the heck were they thinking? But in this particular anthology, I've seen some of the reviews, and I'm looking at this going, it is absolutely incredibly different what they're saying about this particular work. So for you, Mark, when you go into your creative suitcase in your brain and you pop it open, what kinds of things do you need to bring forth before you start to create?
Um, for this particular instance, it was a matter of taking something that I would normally never delve into, which is cult and religion and something that I grew up with, and just taking that concept and bending it in kind of an evil way to the point where we get a story that is something that's so dark and kind of taboo that it appeals to a lot of the readers. I think if you can draw a reader into your story to the point where they don't even think that they're reading a horror novel, that they just pull that story into themselves and they make that story evolve to themselves, that's the point you want to be in. You don't want, yeah, you want your typical horror readers, but if you can take somebody who just wants to read a good story and have them read a horror story and have them completely love it and be just like, oh, I'm going to check out more horror now. If somebody can write like this to the point where they pull me in and draw me into a story and make me care about the characters and what's going on, I think you're going to have a reader for life.
There's a concept about breaking the flashlight. And breaking the flashlight means, especially in this particular genre, means you're not going to necessarily know that this is a horror story. We're not going to shine the light on there and say, look, everything around there is blood and guts and people are screaming and running and there's the barn and there's evil looking dude and or child that's coming to take your soul, all of that. I think that we've gotten to a point where we are no longer looking for that. We're looking for something that is almost like a shard, like when you break a glass, when you drop that flashlight and the shards go all over the place and you end up cutting yourself ever so slightly on it, and then you start to realize, well, there's something going on here, and then you get to turn into what is being produced in front of you. That's where to go with this. That's what this book is doing for some of these people. They've read it and they're like, my mind just kind of it went on pause. All of my thinking about everything else that was going on in my life stopped, and I just went into this rabbit hole that is really visceral at points and subtle at others. What for horror needs to have obviously the substance, but there also needs to be this subtle kind of thing going on in the background. For you, how do you put that into your works?
As far as the subtlety goes, for me, it's starting off with just a good basic story, and then I've tried to write non-horror and non-paranormal, and for some reason the paranormal and horror always ends up going into it. Really, the same thing happened with this. I started off with trying to write a straight-up cult short story, and then I really kind of graduated to the idea that these people were doing something completely paranormal. So you've got a cult situation where the members of the cult are gaining a supernatural power from the angels and the demons that they're actually consuming. So really for me, it's just a matter of taking the reader to a place where they start off thinking they're just reading a straight up, maybe kind of a little bit strange cult story, but end up in a place that's completely horror and paranormal and supernatural.
Whom did you give your piece to before you sent it off for submission to let them read it?
I gave it to my wife. I would never give it to my mom. But I did give it to my wife, and she said, "Are you serious? You wrote this? This is pretty sick." And I said,
I made you.
Yeah.
What did you do? How could you do this?
and it's a matter, I do go to church every Sunday, so this would be something that I would not let my pastor read. It's just one of those stories that I normally wouldn't write because I am, pretty, I won't say religious, but I try to go on the straight and narrow, and this is not that. So it was a really good departure for me as an artist to bring something a little bit different and something that I normally wouldn't write. So I just had a lot of fun with it, and it's something that I'm sure the reader is going to have a lot of fun with. And it does tie into the novel that I'm also working on, and the novel is the same way. The novel is to the point where I'm kind of sitting down going, wow, my mom is never going to read this book, and my pastor's never going to read this book, and I'm really glad that I'm writing it, but I'm kind of, it sort of scares me in a way because I know what can happen in demonic type situations. I look at that as being a very real phenomenon and a very, very real thing. So you're opening doors also when you do stuff like this. So I've done a lot of praying when I am writing this novel. Kind of like putting a hedge of protection around myself because you're getting into areas that can open doors, in my opinion.
Let me ask you a number of questions.
Sure.
Surprise. One is, do you feel that, or is it your experience that you have a double life where you're walking to see doing your day job and you're being your day person as opposed to your night person where you're creating these particular works? And if so, do you feel that you are compromising yourself in any way?
Oh, that's a terrific question. I do think that I am living somewhat a double life because my regular life isn't really dark at all. I have a pretty good regular life, pretty good job, normal job, two jobs actually, where I just do my normal day-to-day stuff, and my writing is really a departure from that and kind of like an escape for me. It really helps me to express myself in kind of different ways where I can go into that dark area of my psyche and pull that out. A lot of the stuff my wife reads and she's just like, wow, I cannot believe you wrote something like that. She knows how I am, and she knows my basic personality, and for me to pull something like that out of myself, she's like, I sleep next to you every night, should I
Hmm.
be worried?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm. I've seen some of the stuff my husband writes, and I'm like, yeah, okay. It's you when you are with someone who you deeply love and respect, and you know them pretty much from one side of the flashlight, so to speak, as we're using that lately. Um,
hmm,
you don't get the real full view, but sometimes what it is about that person that you enjoy so much is based on what they can pull out of them, how creative they are, or how much life they've lived before they even met you.
definitely. Yep, yep. Um, and my wife has read pretty much everything that I've written, and she is my biggest advocate as far as my writing goes. I've let other people, friends and things, read things too, but she's the main person that I bounce ideas off from and stories off from. So if she's happy with it, that's a good thing. And she'll tell me, she's like, if you know this probably won't get published, or you could do a lot better. So I'm glad she gives me that wall to bounce things off from.
Allowing for your creative side to come through, if you have very intense work that you need to do during the day to be able to help bring money into the home,
Hmm.
is a lot of times a great way to be able to relieve some stress, pressure, that kind of thing.
Definitely.
And so you're able to do that. Talk to the people that are going to be eventually watching this about what they can do to be able to start bringing that creative side out, if in fact they feel that writing is for them.
Sure, absolutely. I love doing stuff like this. Basically, the first area of advice that I can give them is leave everything that is going on in your day-to-day life outside of your workspace. Go into that room or go into that closet or wherever you write. Don't think about any of the other stuff. Focus on exactly what you're doing at that time. Throw all those stresses away that you do your day-to-day work normally and become the writer. When you're in that room and you're in front of that computer or have that pen and paper, you are a writer. If you're trying to do it, you're successful, because 99% of the people don't try. So once you try, you're a writer, and I think we've talked about that before, as far as like whether people should be called authors if they're self-published and things like that, which I think is just silly. If you're trying to be a writer and you're putting words to paper and you're making the effort, you're an author.
And we can have a bazillion hours of discussion on whether or not indie people are real authors and
Right.
or all of that. I mean, just stuff just kind of like blows my mind. Part of what goes on in every particular group is that there's always this 10% that has to take something that is creative and smash it to the bits, because
Right.
of course it's not done like X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the fact that people, I don't know, people are creative. They all have their own brand of what they deem to be worthy of something that's able to be printed, and all of that. I would just like leave the heck out of everybody and let them do their own thing. And if somebody out there likes what they're doing, fine. It's
Yep.
rare that you put something out and that nobody likes at all. And if that does happen, then maybe you kind of sort of need to think about something else to do.
Right.
But there's always something for everyone, whether you do it however you make your creative stuff. I don't know where the hell I went off with that little tangent, but what I want you to do is give me a couple of ideas about how you work when you first start putting a piece together. What are some things that you find that are productive for you that can help you get into that creative flow?
As far as my process goes, I do like to create some kind of an outline just so I know where I'm going. And I also, as far as novels go, I write the end first. I don't necessarily write it, but I have an idea of where I'm going at the end. It just works a whole lot better for me, because I can set an ending point and then work my characters into that ending point. It doesn't always work that way, because as we all know, characters tend to pull a story in one direction or another that's completely different from where you're originally going. But for me, it's always better to have an endpoint to start out with, just so I know where I'm headed with where I'm going. And then I just bridge the gap from beginning to end. As far as the whole creative process, music helps me a lot with that, and I know a lot of other authors, music is a big influence on their writing. Mine is just the louder the better in my ears as I'm writing, and then when I edit, I just turn it all off and write in complete silence with the door closed. So.
All right, we're going to go over to Lisa Vasquez, and we're going to ask her what she initially thought of Mark Deloy's piece, Cult of Angel Eaters, and what she felt was the value of this, and to have it placed in this particular anthology.
Okay, so what I did with the voices within Anthology was I put together a panel of authors, editors, just staff on SSP, and I gave them all. Well, Veronica did it for me, but she was the head of that particular panel. And what we did was we sent out blind stories. So they got the story. They didn't have the author's name or any information about them, and we sent it out to this panel, and I let them vote on it. And then once they had all voted and gotten everything out, I read through them, and I was completely blown away by it because, number one, I have my own thing for angels and demons and things like that, and it was sort of right up my alley, and I just loved it. And I understood where you were coming from with that, like you're going through a dark place and you're questioning your faith, because that's what I was doing with my book, and you can tell when somebody else is going through that, and I just loved it. I love the unique way that he took the whole story, and I was so glad when they chose it. I mean, I can override things, but I try not to unless there's an extreme case, because I really trust the panels that I put together. They're younger, older, they're different walks of life, they're different, they do different things for different experiences in life, and so when all of them can come and agree on something, I absolutely know I have a winner on it, and I've done that since the beginning. So when I got his story, I absolutely loved it, and I thought, I'm so glad they picked this one, because it is definitely going to shock some people when they read it in the book.
So coming from the viewpoint of an author, Lisa, how important is it to have confidence in where you're taking your work, and what is it for you when you find someplace that understands where you're going and takes it to the next level?
I think that's probably the best thing that any author can do, is to find a place where you're comfortable and you can be yourself and your voice can come out. You can use your own voice, and you can use different tricks, and you're not afraid to try, challenging yourself or pushing the limits or breaking rules, because that's where genius comes from. Mozart didn't follow the rules, Picasso didn't follow the rules, Einstein didn't follow the rules. He broke all the rules. All of them did. And, Anne Rice didn't follow rules. We had vampires that people had never seen before. They had a humanity to them. So, to me, when you find that place where you can kind of tip your toe in and people go, yeah, come on in, that's where you need to be, because once you have confidence in your work, you're not afraid. You're not hesitant. You're not holding back. Right. And once you can do that, that's where the genius happens. Absolutely.
So one of the cool things that is about this anthology is that you actually have a piece that is going to be put in, well, that is in the book now because it's out live. For you, being the head, though, of this particular publishing house, it is not about getting your books printed. It's about getting other people's work printed. So this is going to be a very rare occasion to be able to actually see something by you actually in print form when it comes to Stitch Smile Publications. And there are a lot of people that I know that really appreciate that you are very much more mindful of the other authors and the importance of what it's like to have their voice being heard, especially in the Voices Within anthology. Your piece is called Janie's Got a Gun, and I'm going to ask you, Lisa, what was going through your life when you wrote that particular piece?
Quite obvious was I was listening to that song, Janie's Got a Gun, and I wanted to take it to another level because it's already a dark song. I mean, this poor girl is going through so much, and I love Steven Tyler's voice. He's screaming it for her, you know, and he's going in this direction. You can see that there's just this craziness going on, and I thought, what the hell's going on in her mind? And so, you know, when you start going through a lot of tragic things, your mind does take you to some very bad places, and sometimes you don't have people that you can trust around you, and the people that you do trust can sometimes betray you. So I wanted to really focus in on that. Like, what if everybody that you trusted really wasn't real? It was something that you had created in your mind, or you don't know what's real. Can you imagine going through that? And so that's what I did. I listened to that song a couple times, and I thought, I really want to pay tribute to that song, and I really want to pay tribute to fictional or not, the girl that he sang about. So to me, it was about getting into her head and getting into her voice.
Being able to create horror, especially in 2016, means that you need to have a deeper substance than just putting a few words on paper and thinking that people are just going to jump at what you write.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about your viewpoint as a writer, from a writer's perspective, what it means for you to be able to do that, and what do you rely on to be able to make sure that you stay connected to that?
Well, you know, and that's a really deep question. It's a good question because just like anything nowadays, you know, everything's evolving, and like we said, we break rules. So once you break rules, the problem is you got to keep up with that. So when I decided to put my story into the Voices Within, I did that because I'm teaching these people that they have to step outside their comfort zone. I put my story first, not because I wanted to shine, but because I want to have the experience of when they first read this, the first story that's going to get critiqued is mine. So I want to show them how, you know, how to deal with something like that. And I don't mind, you know, being put on the spot sometimes, but you know, it was really just making myself the wall or the vulnerability. And I think that's what comes into 2016 is really breaking down what your vulnerability is and facing it and saying it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to try something new. We have horror authors that are trying, you know, paranormal and fantasy and things like that. The point is, you're not just an author, you're a storyteller. You're a story weaver, and you have to be able to relate to people that are going through some really horrific things right now. I mean, look at what's going on in the UK, and look what's going on right now in Virginia with the tornadoes, and we had flooding back now, and this is their escape. So they have to be able to relate to you, and they have to be able to relate to the character. And putting yourself, whether it's a personal experience or not, you're putting something of yourself in that character, and if you can't reach other people, that's it. You're dead in the water before you start. So you have to break down those walls, and you have to say, I'm getting into some really deep emotional aspects of what this person is going on to, because that's what horror is. We all, you know, we all know what having a crush is. We all know what falling in love is. But some of us really have not, like you said, been in the basement emotionally. Some of us have not hit rock bottom. We either deny it, we haven't gone through it yet, we're not old enough to go through it yet, or we've just had a, you know, fantastic life, and if you have, more power to you. But when you can get into that emotional side and say, you know, this is a very dark place, I've cried, you know, most people see me, I've said they see me and I just look very stern, or I look, you know, a certain way. That's my image. That's my author image for horror. But when you see me on here, if you see me in our meetings, I'm laughing and I'm joking and I'm doing whatever. So for the biggest thing for most people is they've never seen me cry, or they've never seen me become soft or vulnerable. And when I do my stories, I get very soft and vulnerable. So a lot of people are shocked by that, but it's dragging them in. And also, I think people miss the development and research part. You're not going to develop your character and the story that follows them if people aren't emotionally invested in those characters, and if you haven't researched something so that they can feel like they're walking down that street with you, or they're going through that emotion with you, you're also dead in the water. So I think those are probably the biggest things right now.
All right, and the other part of it is that you need to have, on top of everything else, you need to have compelling ideas, strong writing, and a very sensible plot. But people don't want just buckets of blood just dumped on them all over the place, and be told to say, oh, you're supposed to be afraid. You need to have that great character development and a strong sense of why they're where they are in the experience that they're having.
Right. Right. You definitely want to make sure that you are building the suspense. I think there's steps to it. Stand at the top of the stairs and jump down, and there's a monster. You're creeping down the stairs, and you're feeling the air around you, and you're hearing things around you. Your senses are on fire. in touch with senses that you normally aren't in. It's fight or flight when you're in horror. So
Right.
if you just start off with bang, where do you go from there? What do they expect from there? Is it constant? And let me tell you, when people are constant on edge, they're not paying attention to what's going on. So you have to almost build their trust and bring them into that story like everything's okay, come on in, take their hand and bring them in, and then lay it on them, and they're like, whoa. So there's an element of surprise, there's an element of suspense, and during that whole time, like I said, you're engaging them and you're getting them invested in those characters. Like, for example, you can have a bad guy like Hannibal Lecter. People are charmed by him, are almost enamored with him, but he's a horrible man, And so if you can do that, you've got yourself a winner.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the concept of whether or not horror is true literature. And here's where I'm going to come from. This is where I'm going to... Horror is actually one of the oldest, in my opinion, forms of literature, both written and oral, that there is.
Mm-hmm.
So why are some folks out there saying that horror is not literature?
Oh, 1 second.
Bless you.
Okay. 1 moment.
You okay? Poor Lisa.
Yep.
Oh, my throat got really dry.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know. It's kind of creepy talking about this kind of stuff. Getting all choked up.
Make me cry, girl.
No, right?
Okay. Okay. So is horror really literature?
Right. Yeah.
Let's go to the Greeks, and I am Greek, so I can talk about them. The Greeks had tragedy. My throat is really going. I apologize.
It's all right. Don't worry about it. Mark, there's probably something paranormal going on here. We might have to do some research.
Yeah.
Do an exorcism or something.
Woo. Okay. So the Greeks had tragic stories. They had tragedy. I mean, Hamlet. You have Oedipus. You have all these things where it's blood and gore and horror.
Mm-hmm.
Our societies are built on war and slavery and going across oceans that we never knew. We thought we were going to fall off the edge of the earth. So there's no way possible that there can be no way that horror is literature. Moby Dick, is a scary freaking story. I'm sorry.
The Odyssey.
The Odyssey is scary.
I like the Odyssey.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. These are people being brave enough to go into territory that we've never discovered before. You can call it action, you can call it whatever you want, but people are scared to death about what they're going through. And let me point out to you that Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, excuse me, who would have thought she wrote that about, 200 years ago?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. And we now have transplants. We now have, people coming back to life.
Yep.
So who would have thought that was possible back then? It's horror, it's real life, and I'm sorry, but, life isn't pretty all the time. So,
Mark, have you run across anybody that's come up to you and said, when are you going to get serious about your work because you're really good at what you do? You should do X, Y, or Z instead?
As far as, are you saying like my work as far as my regular daytime work?
We're talking about writing here, Mark.
Yeah.
And the concept would be, have you run into anyone that has said to you, your writing is really well done, but I do think that you should plant your feet in something that is a little bit more literature-like?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've had people tell me that they like the way my...
Oh, more paranormal.
I can't bring anything on that's
there?
paranormal that has anything to do with paranormal because it completely screws up my cast.
There we go. Yeah, I've had a few people say they really enjoy my writing, but they'd rather me write non-horror stuff. And like I said, I've tried to write traditional fiction, it just doesn't work. That paranormal or that horror element just kind of creeps into it, whether I like it or not. I think I've written 2 just regular, straight up essay type stories in my life, and I wasn't happy with either of them. So I tend not to listen to people who tell me not to write something that I enjoy.
If you're not doing something that you enjoy when it comes to writing, because of the fact that there's an investment of time, maybe there's an investment of literal investment that you have to put into it to be able to get the materials and whatever you need to be able to create, then you shouldn't do it. And that goes across the board for any creative thing that that you try out. But then there's the other side of this. You can have people, you want them to like what you do, you want them to be happy or excited for you, or to be invested in what you're doing, and sometimes when they're not, it can have an effect on you as creative. Have you run into that at all, Lisa, for any of the stuff that you've done? And if so, how did you get past that?
I think the most important thing is what we talked about, is you have to have confidence in yourself. If you're confident that what you're writing is, believe you have something here, I mean, everybody needs practice. An athlete starts off, they need practice. Anything that you do, you have to stop listening to everybody else. You can take in opinions, you can take in advice. It's like having a baby, I mean, everybody's going to tell you what to do and how to be a good mom, but really the only person that can develop yourself and develop your skills is you. So you take it where you want it to go, and you have to have a backbone and say, I am so flattered that you think I should be doing something else, or you think I should be doing another way, that you have confidence that I can be this great, literary artist, but really I am. I already am. And it may not be what you want me to be, but this is who I am, and this is what I'm happy doing. And I really think that you should read my work. Don't be afraid to say it.
So, all right. So, Mark, you're very good at being able to help guide people through the process of writing and finding their voice. What I'm interested in hearing you talk a little bit about is, when someone comes up and says, I'm really interested in writing in this genre, I like what you're doing, I think that I can invest time into doing it myself, I have an idea, what is it that you're able to help them get to see about what they're creating so that they decide that they can take that next step?
Sure. If they're drawing on their emotions, whether it be fear or whether it be shock or just anything in day-to-day life that kind of turns their world around, that's, I think, where you need to start with the horror genre. If they're going to write in that particular area, they need to draw upon things that scare them, whether it be having their child abducted, or whether it be spiders or clowns, or what disturbs them, what gets in their head, and what makes them just send shivers up their spine. For me, it's always been that paranormal, but it's also other things too. It's things that I've seen that just kind of trigger an element inside of myself, and so that would make a terrific scene for a book or a story. A lot of the times it's things that I've experienced, and I've kind of down to the point where I say, well, what if this had happened instead? And I think that's a really good place to start too, is what if. I think that's where Stephen King says 99% of his ideas come, what if this happened, or what if that happened. If you can start with that and twist it around and pull good characters into it, I think that's where you really need to start with the horror genre.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so we're going to go back over to Lisa, and we're going to have Lisa talk about The Unfleshed. It is a work that she has created. It is not published by Stitched. It is published by
Actually, we are going to probably shop it around, or I'm going to self-publish it. So I haven't decided yet.
Oh, okay. Would you like to give us a little bit of a taste of what Unfleshed is?
So the Unfleshed, speaking of Mary Shelley, is a take on, it's a modern day take on Bride of Frankenstein. It's set back in 1300s when the plague was hitting England and places like Asia, and the plague kind of moved towards there. So it's sort of a background noise of the setting, but there's a doctor, creepy little man, and he's prolific, so people know of him. He's in as the doctor or the physician, and he gets his sights set on Morrigan, whose father was sergeant at law. So they go through this whole story where she's got to deal with the creepy old guy that's following her around, and the father is trying to keep everybody from going crazy. So imagine if it was modern day, we have fights and things like that, but he's trying to keep the peace. He's trying to keep things under wraps, and all this is going on underneath his nose. So the doctor, the creepy side of the doctor is that he has developed his own sort of cure for the plague, but there's of course a price to pay for that. And so I won't give it all away for you, but just know that Morgan becomes afflicted with the plague, and so he finds his opportunity to go to her father and try to arrange a marriage with them. So it goes from there, and it goes pretty wild from there.
Oh, I can't wait to read that.
Talk about some of the other stories that are in this work. Now, my first hour, I had Justin Gowland on, and I'm not sure if that went through or not. His piece, Night Train Fights. Give us a little bit of a taste of what that is.
So we have actually 2 stories in the anthology that have to do with trains, and I think that is really, really cool. Trains are sort of classic in themselves, and they go back to beginning, and it's one of our first sort of transportation. So there are a lot of ghost stories and paranormal stories that go along with trains. You have whodunits and things like that. So they're kind of their own entity, I think. And so I really liked Justin's take on that story. And again, like I said, I had the panel going through it, and I don't want to give away too much about it, but Justin has a very unique voice. He has a couple other books that we are going to be publishing as well, and he's got his own he has his own following, and it's I guess it would be okay. So each story goes to what somebody perceives as their voices in their head. So it could be paranormal, it could be mental, it could be demonic, and so this one would be more paranormal. And I really enjoy his take on it. So again, I really don't want to give too many spoilers on it because they are short stories. But
I'm gonna move you over to another one. David Court was also on my first hour,
okay.
and he had one called Blasphemous Tumors.
Yeah, that one I was really, really, really excited about because it's a play on words for Blasphemous Rumors by Depeche Mode, who happens to be my favorite band ever. So if you're listening to David Kahan, I love you. But yeah, so his story was really. I don't even think the title has anything to do with the story, but his story is pretty dark and twisted, and you have to read it. It'll take you. You think it's going one way, and it totally turns into another direction. It's great.
I have talked a little bit about the reactions to the stories that are in this particular book, and some of them have said that it is like nothing else they've seen within the last couple of years. It brings new life to the horror genre. What do you think about people when they say stuff like that about your work as a whole?
Yeah, that when I heard that, it really made me happy because this was actually in the works before SSP really got off its feet. And so, when you start talking big and you have, all these promises that you make to people, that's number one. Number two, these people came from all walks and up, veteran authors, brand new authors, and we put them together and we made this fantastic book. It's novel length, and each one of them is about the same amount of words, which I thought was really kind of weird too, because sometimes you get really short ones and sometimes you get some that go a little bit over. But everybody was pretty much about the same word count. And the array of stories that came out from this, like I said, some of them were, mental issues, some of them were paranormal, some of them were demonic possessions, and some of them were just like way off, like alienish kind of things. And so to put them all into one book and people love it, yeah, I was like, it was great.
All right, so let me see, and I've got people that are like IMing me about this particular book and all that. They can find it on Amazon.com, but we also have it on Stitch Smile Publications, don't we? On the
That will
.com.
be going up live very shortly. It just went up on the 22nd. We are also going to have the paperback as soon as CreateSpace allows us to say okay and give the green light. They're a little bit slow, but that should be going out relatively soon. And also we'll be at Fandom Con in Kentucky, or Louisville, Kentucky, and those will be on the table then too.
End of July.
End of July.
Fandom Fandom Con, awesome kind of thing that is going to be. I'm debating whether or not I'm going to be going, but I think if I don't go, Becky will probably slice my head
she'll
off.
pummel you, yeah.
So I probably should make plans to make sure to get there. All right. So is there anything about either this work or about the company Stitch Smile that has surprised you since its start in January?
Well, this book, what surprised me about this book, number one, was how much work went into it. I had 3 editors editing the book, how much it's well received, and also the fact that everybody donated the story to sort of help out Stitch Smile Publications. So everything that you guys do, meaning the purchases of these books, goes towards Stitch Smile, and it helps me to pay my editors and my staff. So it doesn't go to me, it goes to them. And if you guys are willing to help us out, we would definitely love for you to take a look at this book. And I am proud that you will not be disappointed. You're not just going to get a book you don't want to read. So you'll love it. The second thing is for Stitch Smile Publications, the biggest surprise that I have is that my staff is amazing. And that includes Jackie, because you guys tirelessly give to me. You never stop. You guys just keep going, keep going. When there's times where I just want to put my head in the sand, I have these happy faces who are mentoring, they're recruiting, they're talking about Stitch Smiles, and I feel like I'm kind of on the outside looking in as if I'm not even there, because they just go out and they're like, here, we got you 5 people, and I've got submissions coming in, and the love that everybody has for each other is talked about. You will never hear anybody say don't love who we work with and who we work for. And I can't get people out of the Thursday meetings. I can't get them out. They're like, no, we don't want to go yet. I'm like, but I don't have anything else to talk about, So they just love each other. And yeah, it's brother and sister, rivalry things going on. But for the most part, the love that goes into everything. You know how your mom says, oh, I made it with love. Yeah, that's how every book is made. And, even though it's horror.
Hey, Lisa, Lisa, guess who we have on the air right now, all the way from Poland?
Who do we have?
We have Norbert Gora, and he is going to be talking about his piece.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Norbert.
Pure Soprano of Death. Check you out. Dun, dun, dun!
Dum, dum, dum. And I would say, oh, I can hear you.
I hear you. I don't see you, but that's okay. We're going to hopefully, at some point, we're going to be able to get his camera working on his computer, but we won't be able to do that right now. I wanted Lisa to be on here when you arrived. If nothing else, to say hello. You're welcome, Lisa, if you would like to stay. We have Norbert Gora, and he has a piece called Pure Soprano of Death within the walls of the Voices Within, a stitched anthology. So, Norbert, what was going through your mind when you created Pure Soprano of Death?
That's a good question, because I was working as a care assistant, and especially with people with mental health. So, voices, I mean, strange voices, weird voices are... can you hear me? Okay, so I
I
thought
get you.
it's
Nope.
okay.
It's fine.
Okay, and then I realized that I should put those experience on paper. And you know what? In one of Relay's movie, there was a sentence about you cannot hear scream in open space or something like that. And then I thought about changing it. And uh, what do I do if if in the open space I hear some voices within, and especially in open space when you don't know what's going on. And then hello, just come in, uh, go with me, go deeper, go deeper. And that was weird. And why not? And I just thought, why not? Why not?
It's really important when creating horror, that is that deep, darker side of horror, to be able to hit psychological notes within it and give people the sense that this could actually happen. Talk about that.
Yes, as I said, I was working as a care assistant, and I had to work with these dark faces of people. I had to deal with those not so good, not funny, as I said, not good experiences. And then uh, I have to deal with big emotions. So especially in horror, writer has to deal with with those emotions, with all bag of bad emotions. And the some strangest feelings, some strange places. And so in my opinion, that only bad experience can create bad experience. um, but past can create the good horror. That's my opinion.
It's when you are in a particular situation where you're watching people whom do not have their faculties anymore intact, and they really think that there is something that is trying to hurt them that other people can't see but only they can, or they crawl into a very dark place and they don't know that that's a that's just a mental trap. It's not something that's real. It's
Mhm.
difficult to see that as well. And I would assume that it would have some sort of an effect on any caretaker that would have to be around
Yes,
that a
yes,
lot.
yes, exactly. Yes, so I decided to write horror stories, horror poems, because of of those experiences. So I made main characters based on people I've met. So maybe not all, but I decided to take bad experience, bathed in doubt, in despair. And then I realized that it's going to work.
When you when people write in horror fiction, it's actually based for the most part on human condition, and to
Mhm.
talk about that condition in a way that seems to be less, I guess, emotionally threatening, or physically demanding is a great way to be able to allow people to have that kind of release.
Mm-hmm. Uh, well, um, uh, one of the greatest writer, Graham Masterton, tells about that he hadn't such a situation in his life, being beaten by someone. But you know I think that good horror writers have to have to experience such a thing, and then I couldn't I cannot create the good character. I cannot create the good plot without experiences from the real life.
Right.
Yeah, I'm.
Allowing yourself to be able to create like this, and having your work accepted by multiple places, because you have a lot of your poetry and other pieces out in a pretty
Exactly.
vast area.
Mhm.
What is that like for you to know that your work is so greatly accepted in different cultures, in different places on the planet?
That's also kind of hard question because my answer is I don't know. My poetry is flowing out from the heart. So some of course I've been rejected many times. It's not like I I've always been accepted. So. Um, so you said about different cultures, and
Yes.
yeah, that's a funny thing because I try to recognize the area of writing, especially when I think about poetic journals and anthologies based on not fantasy, not non-fantasy anthologies, but based on real life. And um, a few days ago, I decided to write 3 poems about fighting with racism, and all of them have been accepted to the anthology made by Indian group Our Poetry Archive, s- and so it's like I need to get an idea, and it doesn't have to be horror, it doesn't have to be sci-fi, and it could just describe the life, the love, the hard wiles in our life. So yeah, I try to mix all genres, not only put my all creations in fantasy, in horror, in sci-fi genre, but non-fiction also is in my interested as a writer.
And it's when I did the pre-interview for you and I listened to what you find fascinating about writing, very often you would go back to that. I enjoy learning about different cultures. I enjoy learning about what they have as far as their ancestry, what drives a particular culture. And I think that if we got more people that were invested in doing things like that, that we would have even more really great pieces of work.
Yeah, I think, and probably we wouldn't have Brexit or something like that.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a wonderful release, but also a wonderful camaraderie among people who are creatives when they can go and they can express themselves and they see that they're getting valued by other creatives, and they feed off of that. It's almost like a necessity for them to do that.
Yes, well, on my Facebook, I have a lot of friends from almost from all of the world, and I met a writer from Nigeria, and I think he's famous even in United States of America. So um, I when I met all those people, I realized that poetry is really standing over the world. If you know what I mean. So it's just like
Yeah.
yeah, it's it's coming through. It's crashing the borders. Yeah, poetry shouldn't be placed only on the line of the countries, but it should cross all the borders, um, and that's why I try to do all the time.
Is there anything outside of the creative work that you do with poetry? Is there anything that you would like to try? Maybe a little bit of a longer piece, or is this something that you feel that's where your niche is and that's what you're going to concentrate on doing?
uh, well, I have a plan, but
If
it's
you
gonna
can't,
be.
if you don't want to talk about it, that's okay. I don't want to spill anything. But that it's well enough to say that you have a plan, and that so we
Yeah,
can envision what.
maybe I can say that I think about creating a novel. I've got even an idea. It's about, yeah, it will contain some demons and church which has been burned many years ago. It's close it's not far away from my town, so maybe, yeah, I'm still thinking about it, but poetry is on my first place before before the novel.
You have to really, as a creative, you really have to understand what your foundation is. And I believe that if you have a well developed foundation, you can be able to express yourself in different genres or in different um, venues, different kinds of categories of creative work. But it is always a very good thing to be able to have something that you can go back into and you immerse yourself because you know that that's your element where you're most productive.
Yes, because maybe it's not nothing strange, but in my opinion, this safe place in writing for me it's just horror. So I, but funny thing is about that is that I started my career as a sci-fi writer, and
No
I was,
way.
yes, I was impressed by Lamb, by Philip D. Kindred, by Arthur C. Clarke. So
Yes.
yes, I dream about flying to explore the universe, and so I created a lot of short story based on sci-fi motifs, and then after a few years, I took a book of Dean Koontz, and then everything has changed. I fell in love with horror, and I couldn't even imagine my life without horror.
There are sometimes people that would say that horror for them is like a dribble. It's just a speck underneath a shoe, and it does not hold value, literature value at all. And I was talking on the hour previous that horror, I believe, is one of the oldest forms of literature, both written and in the orative state. For
Mhm.
you in your um, land of Poland, what would that translate into?
Well, horror in Poland, it's a fresh genre, not as long as as in United States of America or in United Kingdom, because um, I met writers from Poland, and they have been writing for 10 years. So it's not a long story of horror in our country. We are trying to explore the vastness of gore. I saw a smile on your face.
I like that. It's almost like welcome to my world. It's very lovely and dark. And yes, you may have a seat here and tell me your story. It's very
Like psychologist.
Yes, the other, what I like so much about what is coming out of the UK as far as the horror genre is that they have that psychological bent to it that is very deep. They want to touch you to that last little cord you have in your spine and rip it out of you, without you even realizing what happened until after the fact. And then you are totally immersed into it and you never want to look at anything else. It's a different kind of horror that is extremely dark, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's
I,
what you guys are bringing.
yeah, but um, as I know, in UK, the horror type is based on ghost stories. Yeah, there are a lot of castles. There are a lot of uh, yeah, ghosts and banshees or something like that, whispers from the walls. It's like voices within.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
but there's some difference between UK horror and USA horror. So I'm I'm not bathed in in UK and USA horror. Yeah, um, I I like Dean Koontz, and the Dean Koontz mixed paranormal horror with crime. So I really liked his novels and. Yeah, in as I said, in Poland, horror is a fresh thing. So we are still have to grow. We are still have to learn. We are still have to write and uh, get some wider audience who would like to read our novels, our collections of short stories and um, that's why I see Polish horror. Yeah. Another funny thing that I'm more popular in United States than in Poland.
Do you guys have libraries and things of that sort, right?
Yes, of
And
course,
pub
but
houses and places to go and have a I don't know, you got to call it a pint or a drink or whatever it is, where people sit around and talk and relax. Do you have the ability to be able to go out to places like that and do talks about what it's like to create in this particular genre, or is that not something accessible to you?
yes, we have a famous Polish literary horror festival called Kwason. So it's on October on the last week of October every year, and then people from all around from all around Poland are getting to Krakow, and we are talking about horror novels, about our plans, about movies about there are some also games based on horror genre and yeah last year I really wanted to go here but due to my health problems I couldn't now in this year I really want to get there and talk with my friends. Yes, of course, but another festivals are in Wrocław. It's called Polkon, and in this year, um, Edward Lee and Jack Ketchum will visit Poland.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
That is going to be an amazing experience.
yes, extreme
Definitely.
horror experience.
It's I know that when people go to conventions, I experienced mine first one last week, and it was something that was incredible. It's like you walk in and you close the doors on whatever the heck's going on out in the world, and you just are completely and totally immersed in the people and listening to their stories and why
Yes,
they create
that's
and all of
very
that.
yeah,
It's
mhm.
an amazing experience, and when you come out of that and you go back into the regular world, it was kind of weird. I went to a grocery store, right? And I go almost every day to the grocery store, but I went into the grocery store and I'm like, oh my god, look at all these colors, look at all of this, stuff, and it was like almost like walking into a different world or something like that. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what's
I had, I had the same experience last year.
right?
Yes, yes. I was on one of that convent in Wrocław last year, and after all, when I had to leave, I because I had to get a train to get there, and so when I decided to come back, I thought, no way, it's not. It has to be another dimension or something like that. Look at those sad faces. Oh, I, I cannot stand it.
It was like it's almost like very surreal, like you're walking into somebody else's life, and al- although you're used to doing that and you were used to doing that before you had the experience of being isolated like that, I can start to understand why people who go um off country to go be very isolated to do whatever it is they're going to do, and then they come back. What it's almost shocking to go back into that cycle again. But I think that I want to do it again. I want to be able to have that experience again, to be in that isolation and to talk with creatives and be able to see what they're doing, and maybe, hopefully make what I do better. Uh but yeah, the experience of coming out of that was just incredible.
Yeah, yeah. On such a festival, I met Graham Masterton. We could talk together about writing, and yes, exactly. And my dream is to visit b- it's like StalkerCon.
Oh,
Yeah,
StokerCon, yeah.
StalkerCon in United States is my big dream to visit this place and to meet people who are interested in spreading horror all around the world.
I
And
think I think that when you get that particular experience, it may uh, give you an even more incredible boost to do what you're doing. It's an experience that I've been told is not necessarily life changing, but it is a change in the way that
yeah,
your
so
perspective
maybe
is.
mind changing, yeah.
Yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. So let me see. What what do you want the people that listen to this show to know about Norbert and the way that he creates?
Another hard question. Okay, so my dear listeners, I would like to say that I write for you, that I create for you, that my poetry is flowing from my heart to your senses, and um, my creations are based on a real life experience, bad experience. I've been going through depression and anxiety, so a lot of bad feelings. And now I decided to take all of those experience and put it in poetry, in poems, in short stories. So if you read it, it all of all of those feelings, all of my experience are based on reality.
So the work that you have in the Voices Within anthology
Mm-hmm.
is called Pure Soprano of Death. And I love the title of it. Where did you come up with that?
Yes, because I decided to create a poem about voices in the deeper in the open space, and uh, we know nothing about space, about open space, about and I it's like some kind of Lovecraftian horror, and so we don't know what is in the middle of the space of the universe. I'm not sure if there is any middle, so because universe is still spreading,
Yeah,
so
it's still,
yeah, so uh, but I thought uh, about poem based on song just coming from the middle of the open space, and for astronauts such a song like addictive, like a song of sirens. uh,
mhm.
yeah, it's could be the worst experience, or the, the brain damaged experience, and so yeah. And why death? No, because they won't survive.
Right. Once you get into that situation, but we're not going to give anything more else about it other than it's in this book that people are talking about. That it is just amazing. Today I woke up to a message that said, "Hey, overnight it went to number 18 on Amazon," and I was like, "Oh, cool!" And earlier, or a little bit later than that, it went to 17. So it's bouncing around in there. I think that the more people hear about what is going on in this particular book, they're gonna have to buy it because it is some of the most shocking, amazingly, delightfully
Yes,
devious stuff that there is out there.
yeah, I totally agree with you.
Very cool. All right.
Okay.
So, is there anyone? Because I usually ask if there's anyone that you would like to give like a shout out to, or show some respect to, that has helped you to keep pushing you along to be able to create.
Yes, I would like to shout out to all my English-speaking friends, especially Alex S. Johnson, Juan Gutierrez, Sean Fraser. Uh, I have a list on Facebook, so
Whoever he misses is on
yes,
Facebook.
whoever, all my English-speaking friends. Big shout
Lovely,
out to you.
lovely to have you on the show. And at some point, what we're going to do is we're going to have you on for an hour, as with all of the other people that are going to be part of this show this evening, to be able to get a little bit deeper into their creative bent. I appreciate you coming on. What time is it over there right now?
It's almost it's past half past 4 a.m. So
All right, so
4 a.m.
dedication to what you're doing, the fact that you worked so hard just to be able to make sure that you could get on and do what you needed to do for this half hour is greatly appreciated by myself, and I know by Lisa and everybody over at Stitch Smile Publications. Thank you so much. I gotta go. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye. That was an incredible experience that I just had. Very excited. All right, so we're going to go now over to Robert Brown, and we're going to send him a link and get him to. There we go. All right. Okay, all right, we're going to be getting. Let's see. I know that he writes under a different pen name, so go ahead and click that link, and we'll bring in. It goes by Judas Brown. I'm hoping that there it is.
Hello.
I see you. Yep, our Judas Brown is here, and he's going to be talking about his submission called Sandy into the Voices Within, an anthology produced by Stitch Smile Publications. First, I want to get you to talk a little bit about your background of who you are and the genre that you most fluently create in and all that while I go get your stuff from your email.
Okay. Like Jackie was saying, I'm Judas Brown. My first name is Robert. I go by Robert. I go by R, and I've went by a lot worse before.
Me
as
too.
Far as yeah, I could We're
Yeah.
not going to go into those here. It's a family zombie show, so
It's,
we're going to keep those words out of here.
yeah.
But so I consider myself a speculative fiction writer. Confession time. I'm not entirely sure what horror is because when I write a horror story, someone reads it and says, "You know what? That's not really horror." And when I write just a story that I think is dark, they say, "Ooh, it's scary." So I just consider myself a speculative fiction writer. I like to dabble in dark fiction, fantasy. Occasionally, a sci-fi story sneaks out, usually with a darker bent. There's a little bit of a shadow to most of what I do. Um, but that's pretty much it.
All right. So I'm going to ask you, hopefully, a not obvious question. When you're going in, you're creating, and
Okay.
I have an echo from you on your side. If you've got the show on the YouTube side, click out of that so I don't hear me. Because
I should not. Nope. It doesn't look like it.
all right. Oh, and it's gone. Whatever you did. Don't touch anything. Ah. All right. So some of the line of thinking this evening, we're talking about whether or not horror is literature. And you can maybe also say the same about speculative fiction, but I'd really like to kind of, I mean, if you can do it both ways, that would be good. I'm interested in your take, or if you've ever had anybody say, you know, hey, you write really well. Why don't you write in this? Because it's more higher quality or more acceptable.
So I think there's a lot of disrespect for horror and the other parts of speculative fiction because there's like this impression that it's not real fiction. Real fiction is the stuff that they sit down in colleges and they discuss why the curtain was blue. If it was blue because the writer was trying to talk about the human plight, or if it was blue because you know ice cream was bad that day. Um, I think speculative fiction is very much real literature. We are just, instead of examining human qualities through vague metaphors or instead of examining the human condition very bluntly, we're taking a fantastic lens, and fantastic can mean sword and sorcery. It can mean spaceships and laser beams, and it can mean, clowns hiding in your closet waiting to jump out and stab you. But we take that fantastic lens and we look at real life through it and we kind of turn it on its ear and we tell people the stories that are really about them. So yeah, I think it's definitely literature. Um, whether or not other people do, someone out there I'm sure is warming up a nice email right now for my opinion on it. But um, you know what? If you're reading something and you're getting something out of it, it's literature to you, and you're trying to get me to say the words I'm not supposed to say, but F what everybody else says. If it's literature to you, it's literature. Screw the rest of it.
All right. The other part of horror is that you need to rip the manhole cover off and you need to stare deep into that dark recess and pull out what it is you find down there
Right.
and then expose it
Right.
in a very contextual way so that when the people read it, they know that it has substance and it has a rational reasoning behind it and all of that. If that's not literature, then I don't know what the heck is. And my English degree was in literature.
Right.
So when people decide that they want to take particular pieces and categorize them so that they are sufficiently satisfied, it's not always going to agree with what everybody else says is the way that it should be. And allowing for that to be fine and dandy as creative is what the person needs to do. Now, when you're going in and you created this work, Sandy, was it something that spoke to you about an anxiety or a fear or something that you felt needed to be drawn up from that abyss?
Yes, to an extent, and I say that um, especially with horror, but with just about any work of fiction, there is a tendency for people sometimes to try to view the artist in terms of their work, trying to place that work onto the persona of the artist. The running joke is, what do Stephen King's kids do when he tells them a bedtime story? Um, well, that's of course not what he's telling to his kids. I'm sure he read The Three Little Pigs. I'm sure he read it amazingly. But I don't think he was like went into the blood and guts and all that with them. Um, though they turned out to be great horror authors in their own right, so maybe so. I don't know. But um, with this story, it deals with some sensitive material, and some of it is very much about desires and um, compulsions that can very easily take over. Primal needs that I think are in the animalistic part of a lot of men, and some of them are not able to control them. Some are. Um, so yeah, I think there's definitely a part of it there that it's bringing out these demons that we're afraid of, that are somewhere deep, deep, deep within side of some people, and putting it out there and kind of looking at it in a way that helps you deal with the scary part of the world that's out there.
The truth that you bring to the genre, it needs to resonate. It needs to have an eerie, unsettling echo that turns the mind upon itself. And when you are creating in this particular genre, that is a necessity.
Very true. Very, very true. I'm sorry. Okay. It's very true. You do have to really have people look within themselves with the work. It does need to be identifiable. It needs to be something that they can see, um, whether it's something that they can see in the people around them, whether it's something that they can see potentially within themselves. You want them to read the story and shudder and maybe pull back a little bit.
Every individual on the planet, there was some kind of, I know it was a story, maybe it could have been a poem or something like that, but what the essence was is that you are indeed every piece of person that is on the planet, and you have the capacity to be able to do beautiful, wonderful things. You also have the capacity to be extremely horrific. It's just by choice and or by circumstance that you ride one side of that or the other. And then there's that spot that's down the middle where you've got these voices, these temptations, these ideas that creep in because you either had a particular experience or someone came to you and told you theirs. And being able to draw on that as a creative uh, and bring it up to the forefront so that we can indulge in whatever that spot of insanity meets right now you have is uh, something that I think is very valuable.
Very much so. It's a rough world out there. It's something that, um, especially this year, a lot of people have talked about this year kind of coming off the rails. This has not been a good year so far. This has been a rough year.
Yeah.
It's been a rough year as far as violence goes. It's been a rough year as far as confronting the dark pits that some portions of humanity have managed to make themselves to. And it's been a year that's just been sad with some tragic losses that we've had that aren't necessarily violent. They're not necessarily intentional, but um, still they happen and they impact us.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're taking something and you're trying to deal with everything that's happened, um, fiction's not just an escape. Sometimes it's an escape, but it can also be a way to step outside of the situation that's very real to you and look at it in a way where it's a little safer to deal with the bad guys, to deal with the violence, to deal with the uncertainty of a market collapse. Um, Fiction is not just a refuge, it turns into a shield.
Mm-hmm. And very often there are pieces of fiction that actually at some point turn into a reality because of either the inventive creative idea that comes from the person that's creating it, or a big group of people that say, hey, we want to see if this actually can work. Sometimes it's beneficial, other times not so much.
Sure. And that's something that if you can tell a good story, you can really harness and you can use something terrible for healing. There was a graphic novel series. I don't know if you've heard of it. It was called Mouse in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the whole thing was kind of looking at Nazis in the concentration camp through anthropomorphized mice, um, to make it something that you could really experience to an extent, it could heal to an extent without actually having to go through something as brutal as, say, Schindler's List. Um, so you can definitely use it for healing. Um, in science fiction, there's been tons of stories that started off as just conjecture, and then they turned out to be reality.
Mm-hmm.
You can drive people with fiction towards a better world.
When you go and create for works like Sandy, do you use music? And if in fact you do, is it inspirational for you to create?
So Sandy's kind of unique in that respect. So in general, I jokingly tell people my three muses are alcohol, music, and emotional trauma. Um, because usually one of those three is going to get the ball rolling on the words I need. With Sandy, it actually came from um, Paint It Black, a very popular song, Rolling Stones. Um, and on the way to work one day, I just heard it a little different. Instead of hearing it the way I'd heard it 100 times before, I heard it as a conversation that a man was having with himself inside his own head, trying to keep these passions at bay. So with Sandy, which I don't know that I've written another one too close to what Sandy is, in theme or maybe in tone, but not in theme. But with Sandy especially, yeah, there was a lot of listening to that song to kind of catch the nuances of the conversation that he was having back and forth with himself.
How long did it take you to write this piece?
The initial one took about a week. Now it went through a couple rewrites before it reached the version that it's in now. It started off as a prompt with a local writing group. It was my introduction to the writing group. Um, so no restraining orders came from that, but I think it may have been a close one. They really didn't know me, and it's not. I walk in and we're meeting around a kitchen table, and I'm one of two guys there, and I am by far larger than the other guy. I'm 6'1". I'm 300 some odd pounds. I've got the fuzz, the fluff, the hobo beard, and I sit down and hey, let me read you my violent little story. But there was a little odd shifting, but they took it pretty well. Um, and that was the initial one. It was a lot rawer, as far as not polished. It was definitely more raw. And I think there's parts of that were maybe more disturbing because it was raw. It had a jagged edge to it, much like I envisioned the characters' thought processes to be. But after refining it through a couple of rewrites, each of which took probably a few days each, and then pass them around. Hey, what do you think of it now? Um, I think it ended up with a stronger voice to it overall.
One of the things that I enjoy about horror writers is that their intellect is quite amazing. They can take a look at a situation and they can go and hone in on what it is about that incident, especially if it's something that was actually produced or actually happened by someone. And they can pull out different aspects of it that really truly make that event horrific.
Mm-hmm.
When you go and you were listening to this song, did you have images that came to you that perhaps you had not seen, felt, or heard before when you were listening to that song? Maybe they were more like white noise or something like that as you're listening to it without thinking about creating something with it. What kind of process was happening when you were actually deeply involved in listening to the song?
The first thing that happened is it really split into two separate voices singing it. You have the very soft um, and the very reasoning. I don't want to sing for you because you have listeners and you'll lose all of them if I do. But it starts off very soft. I see a red door and I want to paint it black. And that's fine. That's the very reasoned guy. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have the one who is just fighting against the chains, just shaking the chains. Um, and when he's talking about, seeing the girls walk by in their summer clothes um, and I know that's not what they meant, but all of a sudden it was very much this just this conversation between two people in one head. And
Mm-hmm.
it when I kind of let that go, and it took a few listenings, um, my wife, I'm pretty sure, got tired of hearing it because I played it a lot. Um, Sorry, honey. But it once it took on those two voices, there was no way to unhear it. And I started listening to different versions of it, different covers of it. Destrophy did a cover that I listened to quite a bit for a while. Um, and there's several others out there where um, some of them it's more of a violent song all the way through. Some of them you do have the peaceful and then the violent counterpoint to it. And when I heard it as the two voices, that's when it started to tell the story in my head that I was paying attention to.
When other people talk about creating and creating in this particular genre, is there something that seems to resonate with all of them about where the nature of wanting to create in horror comes from?
So I was actually listening to, well, it was a YouTube video, but there wasn't really a lot going on graphically, so I was listening to it the other day, and I highly recommend it. It's Stephen King and George Martin just sitting for like an hour talking, and they're talking about the craft of storytelling, and they're talking about old conventions that they ended up at together, um, and it was amazing. And Stephen King, who has an excellent turn of phrase, not just in writing but in telling the stories, is verbally as well. He's got a great oral presentation. Um, at one point, I want to say the exact verbiage was something. Well, I can't say the exact verbiage. I want to say at some point it was just, we're just sick effers, and this is how we get it out so it doesn't come out in the real world. And that's what a lot of other horror writers have expressed. The idea hits them, and it's like the car wreck you pass at the side of the road. Once you get this horrible idea that the cheerleader's actually an axe murderer because you drove by um, somebody chopping wood out there, and you decided that the coat they had taken off and thrown on the ground looked like a pair of pom poms. Once you have that image, it's there, and it's got to come out. And I'm not suggesting that anybody needs to call the authorities on horror writers, mostly, but once that image is there, it's done. It's over with. You're going to see it every time you pass that spot.
Right.
Every time you think about it. If you were listening to a song, every time you hear the song, you're going to see it. You're going to see it in your dreams. Until you write it, you're going to see it. So once it's
Is there, let me ask you this then. Is there going to be perhaps at some point a space where you go, I can't do this anymore because if I continue to do this, I will become what it is I am doing?
No, not for me. Um, because mine is about looking at the emotion or the situation and turning it on its ear and blowing it up into huge proportion and examining that feeling. Um, I imagine there probably are some people out there, and I'm sure if I did a quick Google search, I could find people who their life began to imitate their art, and
Mm-hmm.
um, that's something that I think it's very possible that it, people could follow along that path. Um, but for me, it's thought exercises, and that's whether it involves horror or whether it involves, going off and becoming a wizard or flying a spaceship to Mars,
Right.
or whatever story I like the ability. That's part of the reason I call myself a speculative fiction writer. I don't want to pigeonhole myself. I like the ability to tell the story I need to tell.
Part of the reason why I asked you that
Uh-huh.
was to show people that there is an ability to be able to go and delve into very, very dark natures of individuals and do a perspective on them, which is what this writing is about, and come out of it and go, okay, that was interesting. What's next? And not be physically, emotionally traumatized by it for very long, because I know that there are some writers who are very methodical. We talk about method actors when we have actors on, but there are very, very much these method writers that get into whatever the thought process is for their particular character they're writing, and they immerse themselves into it so much that they live their life like that for a little while.
Right.
Now, at some point you may or may not do this, and the then interesting aspect of that would be, how long did it take you to shift gears and come back out as you were before? But the problem with the statement "as you were before" is you're not as you were before,
Right.
because your perspective has changed.
Your perspective has changed. Your entire makeup as an individual can change. Um, and you don't have to actually go all the way down that path to
Right.
hit that change. Um, it's I can eat a slice of apple and I don't need to eat the rest of the apple to know what it tastes like.
Right.
Um, and that's very much the same thing. By taking these situations and examining them, you don't actually need to go do all
Do
that.
it. Right.
This is not a what was the movie Falling Down situation where
Yes.
I had to prove to myself that I could be a bad guy too. I wasn't just a good guy. No, this is not that.
Mm-mm.
You can take something like a personal loss. Um, and one of the stories that I just recently sent off, um, it started off. There's two losses in it. It starts off with some words that were spoken to me by a friend when I ran into her after her father passed, and um, I said what everyone says. Is there anything I can do for you? And she said, "Can you bring my father back to life?" And that hit me hard, and I carried that around for a while because I stood there stunned, silent. Because what do you say to that?
Right.
And she was just speaking out of grief, which I definitely understand. And then also in there were a lot of the memories of my own father before he passed and passing. And so I don't need to experience that loss again, and no one else needs to experience that loss, even though I know eventually the majority of us will.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that you have to feel. I can give you the slice of apple by painting you the picture and the words and drawing those emotions out of you, um, without you having to take that whole apple on yourself.
All right. And with that, I'm going to tell you, you did an awesome job for your first time on Zombie Palooza Radio. And we are at some point going to bring you back for a full hour so that we can talk more about your creative side of you. This man here, our Judas Brown, has created Sandy, which is in the anthology, The Voices Within, which is available now on Amazon. Get over there, buy a copy of it, and write a review. That's what our authors are craving the most. And do it quick. All right, I got like 30 seconds for you to give me the shout out to the person that you appreciate the most as far as your writing career.
Because I'm a smart man, I'm going to give a shout out to my wife, Natasha. Thank you for supporting me and putting up with all my moods and my mood swings and I just got to get this one paragraph and just wait. Thank you very much. I love you.
Sweet. All right, there you go. We are going to be signing off for this particular segment, and we're going to be going over to Jennifer Ragoza. There she is, the beautiful Jennifer Ragoza. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. All right, so I'm gonna stick your face up there on the big board. Tell our people what it is that you generally create in as far as what you write and all of that fun stuff while I go and get your information from the email.
I write romance, but more on the edgier side. So it's going to have a little mixture of every genre. Keeps things fun and fresh.
Woohoo! And your latest work is 9.
Yes.
Talk about 9. Tell us what kind of yummy stuff we're going to find in this particular book.
9 is a escort / hitman romance. It's told from the story of a woman who's an escort. She started off with a very rough life. She had druggy parents. She had an abusive childhood. She's been through a lot as a child, and through the years, she's just kind of had to make it out there on the streets, and she finds a way to get off the streets by doing escorting.
Your latest work is also currently being translated into Spanish. How cool is that?
It's exciting. I'm so excited, but I didn't realize how difficult it would be. Things in English aren't necessarily translated in Spanish the exact way. So when I'm working with a translator, she goes, well, it doesn't sound the same. So we had to change quite a few words and phrases.
So not having had the experience myself of having a work translated, how did you know that it would be translated into Spanish? What was the crux for being able to step into that in the first place?
I don't know. It's definitely a bigger market. I know besides U.S., Mexico, and I think Germany are the 2 biggest markets outside of our nation. So I wanted to put the books out there and see how well they do.
All right. Well, do you have any idea how long it's going to take before it gets vested into that?
I'm hoping it should be released in about a month.
Cool.
That's
All
the
right.
goal, yeah.
So you're kind of known as a rebel of writing. Talk a little bit about the fact that you don't like to fit into the box, that you like to break the box down and make matchsticks out of it.
Definitely. Writing was not my favorite subject in school. I did not like the rules on you have to write this way and it has to be done like this way and these certain words have to be said. It became like too mechanic for me, and I hated doing it, but I wrote poetry on the side. I still get like a stigma because people will think, for instance, I was at a tattoo shop recently and the guy found out that I was a writer and he says, what do you write? And I said, romance. He goes, do you mean like mommy porn? And so things like that, like he doesn't understand that my writing has, yes, it has romance, but it also has drama and it has violence. So just because you have a romance book doesn't mean it's all gooey and kisses. You know, there's a lot of struggle in what I do. And so when I'm known as the rebel of writing, I have a pot and I throw a little bit of everything in there. But people want to say because you're a romance writer that you write just chick lit. That's exactly, or they think it's like 50 Shades of Grey or.
Now let me tell you, folks, I have never read 50 Shades of Grey, nor will I intend to ever read that particular book. I've heard some stuff about it that it's not really the way it really is, but I don't want to talk about how I know that anyway. I would not have this wonderful creative on my show on a regular basis if she wrote mommy porn or any derivative of that. I don't enjoy any of that. It's not that I don't partake in interesting kinds of things off air, but when I do this show, I want things that have substance. I want to have something that is going to grab you, not by the genitals necessarily, but by the spine, and give you a experience that you have never had in your entire life, and then want to come back for more. She has done this. When I first started talking with her, she had a series in 2012. It was a vampire series, and still is, of course, out there. It's The Guardians, and it is really based on some very, very insightful perspective on that particular genre and that particular kind of I don't know, that particular kind of, I don't know if you would necessarily call it horror, or but it's got the derivatives of that.
Yeah.
Talk about your Guardian series.
The Guardians was my first work out there. So, with each book I write, of course, your skill gets better. The Guardians was, I still am a vampire fan. I love them. It's fun. But at the time, I was reading a lot of the books and watching a lot of the movies, and I got super inspired. But like with anything, you read and you write and you listen and you get inspired pieces and parts from here. So I took things that I liked, but I said, I want to make them a little better. So how can I do that? And so a lot of times movies, they have the vampires as just the bad guys. So I wanted to have the good guys and the bad guys. And that way people have somebody to root for and somebody to hate, because we all love to do that. But that's also told from a kick-ass heroine. She is so strong and so brave, and she went through so much, and she has to give up so much. So with each of my books, I do like to write a struggle and then a light at the end of the tunnel, and that shows people that you can go through so much and still survive at the end, essentially.
Yeah. But that light at the end of the tunnel is not always necessarily what they think it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's important to have that ability to be able to take something and really turn it on its edge and allow them to go through that experience in a very real and fresh way.
Yeah, the Guardians is very fast paced, and so if you look at the reviews for it, a lot of people would say, oh my God, I felt like I was having anxiety when I was reading it, or that they really felt like they were sucked into the storyline, like these characters actually existed. And so when I read these reviews, I was super stoked. I'm like, that's awesome that you can read a story and just feel like you're experiencing what they're feeling.
When we're going to go back to 9 here. Yeah. It is a very intriguing story that this escort goes through. I'm not going to ask you personal questions of how you got into this person's head, but can you give us some sort of perspective on perhaps what you were going through at the time when you first got the concept of making 9?
Yeah. Well, as a child, I remember my mom bought me this VHS tape of Pretty Woman. And I watched it, I don't know, like over and over. I was so consumed with the storyline of somebody just, basically feeling like nothing and going to a store and being turned away because of the way you're dressed and the way you're perceived. And then having a man, it doesn't necessarily have to be a man. You can do that to yourself, but having somebody believe in you and make you feel like you're more than what you're doing. And so when I wrote 9, I said, okay, I love that, but I want to make it a little darker. I want to make it a little more exciting. So I didn't want the knight on the horse type thing. I wanted him to be a little bit rugged too. But writing 9 was very emotionally exhausting for me, because every time I had to go back and do edits, even though she's a character, I'm putting my soul into the story. So it's exhausting to have to put a character through what she went through. And not only that, but also give her a romantic partner that has a hard backstory as well. And I'm working on his story, Trig, which will be out. Right now I'm taking a little bit of a mental break, but as soon as I get back on it, you'll get to hear his story, which is very hard.
It's important to be able to have characters who can carry themselves. why I say that. Okay, so you being a creative and you start to get an idea of a storyline. The character is either going to come to you or you're going to piecemeal it from what experiences you've had so far. Once the character becomes developed, they at some point obtain their own voice. And it is often something that is outside of what the creative first had in mind. What do you do when your character decides to tell you how it's going to be and not you be in control of them anymore?
I felt like the story goes a lot better if I let them tell me how it's supposed to go. It just flows better. I'm having a little bit of trouble with Trig, his story right now, because I want it to go a certain way. And then when I read it back, it's almost like the character will tell me, like, I would never say those things. Why are you putting that on? You know, like, I would never do that. So I have to go back and kind of listen to how that character would do things. And then it flows so much more nicely.
It takes a certain amount of confidence and a certain amount of reserve to be able to do that. Do you have a particular point in your writing career where you realized that you finally got to that point you could do it without getting your ego in the way?
Probably, I think I fought a lot with the Guardians and trying to make it my way. And at some point you just gotta let go. You're like, okay, it doesn't sound good the way I'm writing it. So let me just let them write their own stories. And now, once I got to Silver Lining, I just let it go. And 9, I let it go. And Trig, I'm back on track where I'm kind of fighting like a little bit. So.
Do you feel like you're going back to the well and having to either relearn how to do it, or that you need to just regain that confidence that you had after the other works that you did?
I think it's always difficult when you have a series. I'm not sure what it is, but when there's a series, you always want to make the next book better than the last one. So it's kind of like a war in your head, like, how can I make this better? And by doing that, you're trying to make your own self write the story when you need to let your character speak. And you're too busy thinking about what else can I do that tops off the last book, or how can I shock the readers, or what surprises can I give? And in doing that, you lose the character's voice.
Mm-hmm. So when you're writing, and I'm just talking across the board, are you writing with the perspective that you have the reader in mind, what they're going to be going through as they're reading the story, or do you exclude the reader and allow for the character development, the situational development to come through, and then see how the reader would fit in?
Yeah, I think on certain scenes, I take consideration of the reader. There's a part in 9 where there's childhood molestation that happens in her youth, and when writing that, I turned to my beta readers and I said, how much would this like trigger you or make you not want to read it? Like, what things would just make you close the book and say, I can't finish this? And so they gave me some feedback, and I ended up taking a little bit out because it was too much. It was really too much. So I kind of toned it down, knowing that some women, it may trigger something in them. And like I said, they may just close it and put it aside. And I didn't want that. I wanted people to know her background and to understand her background, to know why she is the way she is, but I didn't want to put too much on there.
It is a finesse that creatives learn no matter what they're creating. whether it be film, a screenplay, a book, short film, whatever. They need to know. It's almost like putting the proper ingredients into a recipe to be able to make, to be able to consume, and all of that. You have to have things that express to all five senses, but if you overdo in any one particular area, it is going to make everything else just fall in on itself, and like a bad souffle, it's going to hit bottom and you're not going to want to eat it.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know where the food references came from. I must be hungry or something. When you started getting reviews for your work, what was that like for you to have these people tell you, I just had such an interesting experience with reading what you put before me, and I feel like I'm changed for it?
I think that's always such a blessing to hear, that your work touches somebody, because you don't always hear from every reader, and you don't know who you touch and who you don't touch, and you don't know what parts touch people, like which scenes hit people. Sometimes I write a scene, I think, oh wow, this is, I feel emotional. I know the reader's going to feel emotional, and they may message me and it may be a totally different scene that didn't even touch me. So I guess it gives me a drive to keep writing, to know that my work is actually doing something. But like you said, along with the positive reviews and the good ones comes the bad ones. So you take the good with the bad.
You have to understand that when you are writing, that the primary source and rationale for the writing is to be able to get it out of your head, no matter if someone's going to read it or not. But that once you put it out there and somebody takes it, and or you self-publish it, that the experience is going to be something of interest. And I think that's kind of sort of the end goal for anybody that makes something where they actually put themselves out there.
Yeah, I got like ripped apart on a forum for writing 9. A guy said, I can't believe you're promoting prostitution. I can't believe with everything that's going on with the sex trafficking. He tore me apart. And I asked him, I said, sir, did you read the book? He says, no. I said, there's not a piece in there that promotes prostitution. Not a piece. And so what happened after, and I was very, very nice about it. And he actually apologized, and he said, I just bought the book. So it was such a, like, at first I was like, wow, he's tearing me apart. And I thought he read the book, and I was like, maybe he misconstrued it, but.
You know what? We have, look, I just did a couple of hours in straight up dark horror. All right. Now people, there are a lot of horrible things that people out there can do to each other, and to women and children and elderly and veterans and all of that. It's out there. It's real. Prostitution, well, that's been going on since probably human beings were created, and it is not something that is going to stop. I have a particular viewpoint that I think about that, which I will not express right now, but to know that there is a difference between prostitution and sex trafficking. It's like night and day. And if there are people out there that are going to have such a strong view about these types of things, it's really important for them to not further make a bigger mess out of all of it by trying to associate something else with this, because it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's
But in her case, in anyone's case, when they are in a situation like she is in this book, you're willing to do whatever you need to do to get out of that situation.
Right.
Like I said, she came from a very broken home. She's on the streets. She doesn't have, she describes herself trying to get a job, but she can't because she's been on the street so long that she doesn't have the ability to go into a room and do an interview like most people would be able to do. No one's taught her these skills. So
Right.
when you're in certain situations, people get desperate.
Yes.
And that was her case. It was her and her friend, and they needed to get off the streets, and they did what they could. And now she's Las Vegas's #1 escort. And doing that. But you were asking where I got the headspace from. I was very, very, very lucky, very honored to talk to a woman who used to do that in the past. And she gave me her time, and I asked her some questions because I needed to get in the head of somebody who did that for a living. How did you feel about yourself? How did you feel about men? You know, how did you feel about people in general? Like I spent about 25, 30 minutes on the phone with her. She was very nice, very beautiful woman. And she's got down the business, and now she teaches martial arts. So, but yeah, it was a great interview, and I got to get in the headspace of how someone feels emotionally. Not just how I think somebody would feel,
right,
but how, she felt doing this every day.
Doing writing in this particular aspect, it's a necessity to be able to talk with people who have had the actual experience. It's almost like trying to go to to be the head of a group, and these people are looking at you because you have personal experience, or you are very invested in what their traumatic thing was that happened to them in real life, and then to find out that they didn't have any of that experience, and they're not one of you, and
Right.
so you have no basis. There's no substance for where you're coming from. How dare you be in this like that? That's why and I don't know a whole lot about your background. I know some, but I was wondering how you were going to do this, and research for any project is extremely important, so that it has the right tone and quality, and it has the right kinds of torques to it that would be featured in somebody's life who's gone through it.
Right. Yeah. I think she was gonna. I think she thought I was gonna ask her like weird questions, but I was like, I just want to know about the emotional stuff. Like, tell me how you felt every day. I asked her what she was scared of. What was the #1 thing she was scared of? And she said she was scared of being hurt or killed by somebody. And I said, were you worried about STDs? And she says, no. Me, on the outsider, I thought somebody that did that would be a #1 fear, that you might get AIDS, but not at all. So that was just the fear of being with somebody and being hurt or killed. At one point, she told me, I have a feeling what someone would be emotionally going through when you did that for a long time. But she says you just become numb. You become numb, and you start to hate men. You start to hate women. Everybody is. She said you look at people a lot different than you did before you did it. And I said, did you ever fall in love with any of your customers, or is it just a job for you? I said, did you enjoy it? And she says, no. She says, I get in and I get out. Everybody's a job. She's like, you have regulars that you see a lot, and you're more comfortable with them. But she did not enjoy anything. It's just, you think of it as you're like your 9-to-5 job. You go into work and then you get off.
Mm-hmm.
And so just, the feeling of just kind of hating life and just going through the motions and becoming numb to everything around you. And with her background, 9 has not had a gentle touch from any man ever. So having a man come in a weird way, because Trig's a hitman, and kind of looking at her differently and telling her she's worth more than she thinks she is, and that men should be fighting over her and she should be doing other things, and you know, she's not used to that. So it was a nice love story to write, but it was really hard with those two backgrounds to make it where it's not so gushy, but that they're falling for each other.
How long did it take you to actually, after you finished and the manuscript's sent and it's done and it's edited and it's all of that and it's a done deal, how long did it take you to process that and come back into your prospectively changed regular mode?
I think I'm barely coming out of it right now. Like, I had so much stuff. My brain is like a freight train, like, most of the time. There's so much stuff coming in and going out that, like, my dad's like, you need a mental break. Like, you really need to just let things clear out of your head. I wrote part of Trig, and then I need, like, just everything to just kind of mellow out. Sometimes you're writing so much, and then as an author, you're always coming up with new ideas and new inspirations. And just today I saw a movie and I'm like, oh my God, that would be such a great book, like something similar. But I'm like, I need to finish Trig. So I think sometimes you get back into regular mode really quick, depending on what you write.
Right.
Something like 9, where it's hard and it's part of it's dark, and it took a long transition just to come out of that book.
Talk to us about this concept here. Somebody comes up to you, they ask you what you do, you tell them that you are an author, and they go, well, oh, well, that's nice. How difficult can that possibly be? Talk about how difficult it can be to be a creative who writes, and what like a daily schedule is like when you are working on a manuscript.
It's really hard. I always say, if you think you can do it, do it, because it's easy to think of ideas. I think of ideas and storylines all day, every day, but it's hard to sit down and put it on the paper and have it make sense. Even when you write a first draft, like, it's terrible. Your first draft is always terrible. You know, you go back and you go, oh my God, that sucks. So you change it, but it's incredibly hard to put your ideas down on paper, have it make sense, have the storyline flow. And then also, you know, the dialogue alone. I remember when I was writing The Guardians, I could not write a fight scene to save my life. Like, it was so, I struggled. It was about 3 paragraphs. I struggled for a week with 3 paragraphs. I was going crazy at my desk. I was like, I'm going to flip this desk over. I can't do it. But there's just, every writer has like a weakness and a strength. And for a while, that was my weakness. I could not do a fight scene, and it took me forever. And you work on that. But it's hard. It's really, really hard. And even if you're at the house, people go, oh, I wish I was at home. I wish I worked at the home. Just because I'm at home doesn't mean my life is any more easier. I'm still doing the same stuff. I'm running around. I got the kids. And if you're in the moment, the zone, and you're writing, and then something comes up, someone comes to the door, or you got to go run errands, or the kids want something, that zone is done, and it's hard to get back in it.
Right.
No, it's hard, and it's mentally exhausting, and you might be in bed thinking about ideas, and then you can't sleep, and you wake up with the ideas, like, how am I going to put them down on paper? And the editing alone, editing is a killer for every author. You'll write it, you're like, this is amazing, I'm done, I'm finished. And you're like, now to editing. And that's like a whole another month and a half just to edit it. It's like an endless cycle, you know? And then you send it to your editor and they go, this is shit. Like, you're like, what's wrong? And so they send back their feedback, and then you got to edit again. And
it is an interesting process. I've watched some of my friends go through it, and when they're trying to get a really good hone on what they're doing, and they think, yeah, it's great, and then they get the edits back, it's so, really, and they go through that, but it's incredibly satisfying though once you actually get it done and they go, yeah, this is what I wanted.
I have the best editor, and he's not allowed to go anywhere else. I'm like, you're my editor, that's it. But no, Edward M. Wolf, he will give it to me raw and he will give it to me straight. If he doesn't like something, if I get a what the F on there, like next to like the paragraph, I know I did like a boo-boo or I messed up or it doesn't make sense. And so I love him for that. Like he does it, and he does it in a way where I understand him and he understands me, and there's no like I'm offended by it. We get each other, and I love him for that, because some editors, they feel like they can't be honest with you because you're going to get offended. You know, tell me if something doesn't make sense, because once it's out on the market, once it's out there, it's really hard to pull it back out and correct and fix things. So that's
Right.
what I like. If somebody can do, you know, the way that he does, and just let me know if I'm messing up somewhere, if things don't make sense in the story. And
You have to have a very good connection with the person that's editing. It's almost like they have to completely understand what your voice is, because it's not up to them to change
right.
what is coming out. It's up to them to know you well enough to know, hey, you can do better. What were you thinking when you were doing this? Were you distracted by something? And allow them to have that honest conversation, because if you don't have that, then you don't know if the work that you're going to be putting out there is good, and that can be very daunting in its own way. You don't want people to look at that and go, this is trash, just simply because it's not cohesive enough.
Right, exactly. Because as an author, you know what you want to say. You know what you think you're writing down, and that doesn't always come across to the reader. And so once he sends me that, and I go, yeah, you're right, that does sound weird, now that I'm looking at it the way you're looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really good. He's just really good at knowing. So I always refer him to people who need an edit, because he's great.
All right. So what do you think you're going to want to work on within the next, say, 3 to 6 months?
Well, I need to get Trig done and out of the way. And then after that, I'm so scared. I'm going to be working on something that's out of my element.
Yes.
Which I know but you may not like it, Jackie. I don't know. But it's going to be actually like an older teen book. But I don't know how I'm going to do that, because that means I have to hold back. But
it is, well, I have a house full of teens and people that probably would, be able to help. If
it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. I don't know how much I'll be able to hold back, but we'll see.
How, when you go and you start creating in a area where you're not familiar, number one, it does help you grow as a author, as a creative. But the first kind of stepping out there is going to be, oh, what the hell did I just do? And I just committed myself to doing this, and the idea that it is going to be a challenge might be kind of something that you're looking at going, I don't know.
I like the challenge. I'll give you a little peek. Is I like seeing those like older teen movies where they're different. The personalities are totally different, or maybe there's something a little unique about one person that someone doesn't see right away, and then they see it later. So that's kind of the area I'm going to go to without giving too much away. I got inspired by a picture of, how can I say this without giving too much away?
It was
There
a
was
picture.
there was a picture. There was a
Thing.
yeah, there was like a storm and somebody had a picture on their arm and it was probably the most beautiful scar I'd ever seen. It was a scar and it was beautiful. And I was like, and
Wow.
people online were, they said they were embarrassed by these, but these scars look like pieces of art to me. So I was inspired by just that picture. I was like, that would be, I could just imagine somebody having something they were ashamed of and somebody else thinking it's beautiful.
It is, that's actually pretty cool. When you can take a subject or a particular element of a someone or a something and turn it into something that is beautiful or on its edge and allow for that to have a positive creative experience, it is it's full of substance. It's very valuable. So good, and all of that kind of thing. I want you to talk to ladies and young people who are female that are interested in getting into the area of writing, and give them something that you've learned within the last 5 years about creating in the written word.
Well, as an author and anybody I've told people this that are, I've did a few speaking panels and young girls are always there and there's always a few ones that are aspiring writers. And I always tell them you have to have super thick skin because we all go through bad days. We all have terrible days. Authors are probably the most hardest on themselves than any job out there. We're so hard on ourselves. And when we put a book out, we don't know if it's going to do good. Maybe it does good for a while. Maybe it drops in sales. And then as soon as sales drop, we're super hard. We're like, oh, we suck. Or, we start to get really hard on, even though we know the work's good, we're so hard on ourselves. And that's why I tell people, I think authors have the highest anxiety, depression, OCD rate ever. Like everybody I know has those. But you have to have thick skin. For one, you're going to be getting criticized for every piece of work that you put out there. So you have to know that up front, that it's not going to feel good.
Right.
You just have to get used to it. And as a woman, that's super hard because we're emotional anyways. We're just crazy emotional creatures. But that you have to get used to, and you have to get used to try not to be so hard on yourself, because you will with every work, with every piece, with every critique, with every review. But creating, everybody says, I have writer's block. I have writer's block. It's not necessarily writer's block. You just have a lot of stuff in your head. You have to let that go. It's just, maybe it's the kids, maybe it's the dog, maybe it's the husband, maybe it's your job, maybe it's, there's too much stuff.
Right.
That's what I'm doing right now, is I'm giving myself that mental break. If I write trig right now, it's going to be trash. It really is. And so I need to let myself just breathe and relax. And that's when your creative juices come, is when there's nothing in your head.
You have to also be invested in what you're doing. It's like any other job or any other situation. I mean, there's some jobs where you just go there and you can be a pardon the pun, zombie, but there are things when you're jumping into that creative pond that you need to be fully invested in. And if you're not, then you have to know yourself well enough to say, this isn't for me right now, or maybe I need to go do something else for a little while so that I can get ready to be able to take on this experience. Writing a novel is like running a marathon, only sometimes it's a lot longer and you don't know what the path is, where the heck you're going to go, where you're going to end up, who you're going to run into, and if there are going to be any kind of roadblocks, whether that be physical, mental, or emotional. So I was going to say spiritual, but all of that, it all takes a very big piece of you to be able to create. And if you're not ready for it, then you need to just kind of pack it up and go and do something different. So, all right.
Yes, and also stay focused on your story, because we have, like I said, your brain's always being inspired by new things. So a lot of times I'm like, oh, I really want to jump on that other story right now. And if you do that, you'll never finish a book. You'll never finish any book. I know a lot of friends that probably have thrown out one book and they can't do another one because they keep starting a new story. So you have to stay focused on one story and put the rest to the back burner. I have like 4 on the back burner. I'm freaking out right now. I'm like, I gotta touch them. I want them. But I know if I do, like, I won't finish Trig, and then everyone's waiting for it. So
I know that there are some creatives out there that will have literally a file system, and they'll have different color of envelopes or folders or something like that to be able to put. If they come across an idea, they take out the folder, they jot it down, and then they throw it back in there, and they go back to working on what they need to work on. And that is something that is valuable for them. But there are other folks that just have to literally stop what they're doing and go and move on to whatever that idea is. Let it vet out and then put it away and go back. And I don't understand how they do it, but they can.
I know authors that can like co-write, like they write 2 books at one time, and I'm like, how do you do that? I'd go crazy.
Right. Do you having to know that there are going to be a lot of voices in a particular book, and especially a novel, and then go and switch out to something totally different where there's another full set of characters, people, whatever you want to call it. How do you and then you've got your day life and your personal night life. All of that I would think would just blur together and you wouldn't know what the heck you were doing.
I don't, if they can do it, God bless them, but I can't. I think I'd have like a mental breakdown. I'm like, it's too much. I don't know who's who. But,
Do you have anything that's out there that you use to be able to help you stay on track, whether it be, I don't know, apps or something that you found online or some kind of program or something like that that you use that helps you keep track of what you're doing?
No, there is some things that sound amazing, but I just have like a paper and a pen, and that's where I keep my my small things like features, eye colors, names. When I first started the Guardians, I was a mess. Like I didn't keep track of anything, and then like I had to keep going back in the story to figure out whose eye color was brown and whose sister was who. And but to kick my butt, it's probably just my husband. He's like, so you working on that story yet? You finishing that story yet? So he's always, yeah, he's
really,
he's always one to just kick me in the butt every so often. I'm like, I'm taking a break right now. Leave me alone.
You have to be able to allow yourself to decompress.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Or step back and take a look at things with a fresh eye. Sometimes people put things together and they have to like take 3 weeks off before they go back to it because they need that. Talk about that while I deal with something in the house and talk about that. I'll be right back.
Yeah, sometimes you just like I made the Guardians and I spit out book 1 and then book 2 and book 3, and then the Silver Lining was I don't know, like 4 or 5 months after, and then right away I spit out 9. And so I think that's, you talked about decompressing, and that's exactly what my brain is doing right now. It's decompressing all those stories and giving me a little time to refresh so that I can come back hard for Trig and then jump on my teen story.
Children. children, just children. Usually they don't make themselves known, but that one was. What do you do when you have life interrupted?
You just go with it. You just have to go with the flow sometimes. You just do it. You just do it.
There are a lot of different kinds of things that I do, and having done this show for a good 3.5 years, it'll be 4 years in October. I have run into some very interesting perspectives on what it means to be a creative and how they fit that into their regular daily life, especially if they've got a lot of things going on like you do, allowing for themselves to be able to stay connected into that creative pond, so to speak, without letting real life seep in and disrupt whatever that thought flow is. What do you do when you end up finding that maybe that stuff is kind of blurring into your creative time?
Sometimes I can use it for the book. Sometimes there is a lot of like thoughts or emotions that I was going through that I kind of put into Nine's character. A little bit of dabble here and there. When I read it back, I was like, oh yeah, I was feeling that at that time. And so that can sometimes help vent things out the right way. Sometimes you just got to step back and get back to your focus. And, you know, like we were talking about, just giving yourself time to decompress. And this is probably my longest decompress time. But like I was saying when you were off camera, that I had spit out so many books that my mind was like, it's time to take a break, to slow down, take a break. Like, I don't know how people spit out books every month. I don't know.
I wonder, I keep running into this term ghostwriting. I wonder if they have people that are on the background doing that stuff. And I didn't even really understand that term until I read some pieces by a particular person that I thought that this person was the queen bee and that she could do no wrong and that everything that she did, it just flowed out of her and she was able to do this. But she was highly prolific when it came to the written word, and one book right after another, and everything just seemed so precise. And then I looked at one of her books, and I mean, I really started reading it differently, I guess. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not her voice. That's not her. That's why does this sound off? And then I learned that she wasn't truly writing her own stuff. After in the beginning, she was. And there was you could tell the cadence for what she wrote was different, and the actual feelings that you would get from the particular pieces were different than her earlier stuff, that is. And then compare it to stuff that came out 4 or 5 years later, you're looking at this going, I don't why does it feel like I'm reading somebody else? Right. But some people, they do what they do because they think that's gonna pay the bills, and maybe it will. But there are people that every once in a while tweak to the fact that that's not your voice. When you go to create, I know that you are very invested in making sure that every piece that you do is your voice, and that although it is being edited by someone else, that it is still the true factor for what it is that you put out there.
Right. There's a really famous author that I didn't know. I don't know if we're talking about the same person. I won't name drop, but she started out writing her own books, and now she has a ghostwriter for the last, 5, 6, 7 books. And when I found that out, I was like, really? Like, I feel like, yeah, I know you're paying them.
You feel cheated. Don't you feel cheated?
Because I feel like you're taking credit for someone else's work. Essentially, you're like, look what I did, but you didn't do it. And I'm not knocking anybody who does it. If you make amazing money, good for you. But I just feel like that, like you're taking credit for someone else's work, and someone's in the corner going, I'm the one that wrote that, I should be getting the fame, and but whatever.
It's you know, you when you go in and you really are truly invested in what you're doing, you're going to take the time to be able to do the work. If you don't have the time to do it, or if there is something else that is pushing its way forward, then you just have to allow for whatever that is and the time that it needs to take, and then go back to it. I don't think that it would be worth the risk of people actually finding out or tweaking to the fact that, hey, this is weird.
Yeah, there's a gentleman who wants me to ghostwrite his story. And I said, no one's going to write your story better than you. I said, if I write your story, I'm going to be writing it from my emotions, my feelings, things that I've been through in my life, all that stuff's going to come out on the pages. And I said, it's incredibly hard to write my own stuff in general. But he keeps every couple of months, he messages me. He's like, you sure you don't want to do it? You sure you don't? And I was like, no, I don't want to do your story.
Well, on the other side of that, girls got to eat,
Yeah.
I wouldn't kind of sort of mind it if I had all the pieces that I needed. I mean, I would have to spend a good amount of time with that person and feel like almost an appendage of that person before I would go and do that kind of writing. Because, yeah, you're going to be bringing perspective to your story, and somebody who maybe knows them really well is going to look at this and go, I had a funny thing that happened. I don't like talking about myself, period, end of sentence. And when I have to do interviews for the show, or for some other things that I do, I clam up and I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I tell them, I said, part of the reason why I'm on this side of the camera is because I don't want to do that. And it's the show and all of that other stuff is not about me. It's about the person either I'm working with or my guest that I have speaking with. And I had to do a newspaper article because basically I asked to have one done. I don't know why or where that came from. And so the questions were sent to me via email, but I had a conversation with the man for about 45 minutes beforehand to figure out whether or not I was going to do this or not, and whether or not there was a story that was worth putting in print. And after he did that, and I got the questions, and I looked at my husband and I'm like, you know me really well. He's known me since 1983, pretty long time. Answer these questions for him. So he did. And I read them and I'm like, yeah, good. So I hit the send button and shifted it over to the guy. Dude writes me back 2 days later and says, you didn't write this. You didn't write this. You didn't write any of this. I talked with you for about 45 minutes, 30, 45 minutes, something like that. How do you know I didn't do that? Because it's my job to know and get the details right. And that's not your voice. He did ask who wrote it. And I was like, embarrassed. I felt like I plagiarized something or, it was that holy crap thing. And, but fine.
I agree. If I had my husband answer questions, he would answer them like how he views me, not how I view myself. You know what I mean? So,
right.
Like I'm a lot harder on myself than he would be. So he's just gonna probably write it totally different. It's probably gonna be like cupcake and ice cream, and like it's just gonna be how your husband saw you. And you're like, yeah, that kind of sounds about right.
Yeah, right. Well, right. And so you hit the send button, but don't. I am telling you right now, and for anybody else that's listening out there, don't do that, because it is eventually going to come back and it's going to bite you anyway. So it's 11:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I do have a couple of people that are saying that they can't get into the show and listen to it, and that it's not live, but I know it is because we've had viewers popping in and out. So I know that that can't happen if it is not live. So quit panicking already. You're making me nuts. Which may or may not be a good thing. I need you to tell me some people that you appreciate as far as your writing, and people that have helped push you along to make sure that you stay writing.
So, like I said, my husband, he always kicks my butt. He's there when I'm like, this is terrible, this is horrible. So he's like my number one fan. He is, and he always goes to work and he promotes the books at work to his people. But yeah, I love him, of course. But Edward M. Wolf, he's a great editor. We talked about him. Mm-hmm. My pub boss, SJ, for taking in The Guardians and The Silver Lining, for thinking the work was good enough to take in under her house. So thank you for that. Rue Volley has did some covers for me. And Kelly Dennis is also another cover artist that I work with. She is amazing. Like amazing. She's another one where I don't have to tell her. I'm like, here's a picture, here's what the story is about a little bit, and she knows me and what I like. And for 9, a lot of people don't know that 9, that wasn't the original cover. I gave Kelly a picture and I said, this is what I like, but I don't like the position of the girl's legs. And she says, I don't think so. I don't think so, Jed. And she sent me a picture and says, what about this one? I was like, oh my God, yes, that one. That's what I want. And so just her knowing me and knowing what she can or couldn't do with that photo, I like working with people who get me, who know my work, who already know what to show me. It'd be like, this is what you need, not that. Right. So she's really, really good. There's a million authors I can't name that we bounce off each other. Maybe we're not having a good day, and we just recently, one of our co-authors tried to commit suicide. So, just being there for each other and being, like, we need you here. You're going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Like we need those days, like people around us to inspire us, to keep us going on bad days. It's very common nowadays. People want to give up. We all have those days. Days get really rough and really hard, and it would just be easier not to be here. But
yeah,
people in life need us. We all need each other on different days. And so there's a lot of authors that just are there for emotional, or maybe they're there to help you with your work, or you're like, hey, what about this? Can you read this? Can you tell me what you think? And there's a million authors I can't even name right now that have helped me on certain occasions, on certain books. And
being able to feel like you're part of something much bigger than what you are, just looking at whatever your circumstances right here, that helps. It's part of the reason why I started this show to begin with, is that my husband felt like he was disconnected. He wouldn't say that, but his children were looking at him differently. They noticed something, and I knew that there was something that was going on, but I didn't know how to fix it. And it's not like putting a Band-Aid on it or giving them a pill and saying, here, this is going to be better. It's not like that. So you have to have other people that really, really they feel very comfortable with, and to help them get through whatever the heck it is that's rolling around in their head.
Yeah, sometimes people don't need too much. They need how are you? What can I do for you? How are you doing today? Is there something I can help you with? Something I can lift off your plate?
Right.
And because a lot of people are not going to come out and say, hey, I need this help, I'm going through this. But if you just come to them and be like, you know, you see when something's wrong with somebody.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know how to fix it. It just helping them maybe lift a little bit off the heavy plate can help them, and telling them how special they are and what you can do for them.
We've been talking with the lovely Jennifer Ragosa. Her latest work is 9. It is live. Please go over to Amazon.com,
Yes.
buy a copy, read it, and then send a review, because you know that's that feeds them. It fuels them to push them into keeping on creating. Thank you so much for what you're also doing for community in your neck of the woods, and helping people move through processes that are quite emotional at times. Appreciate you for doing that, and I love you. Much love to you, and God, you look gorgeous.
Oh, well, I had to put on makeup today for you, girl. I was like, I'm gonna be on camera. Hold on.
You look marvelous. Thank you so much for being on the show, and I will talk to you soon.
Good night, honey.
Bye-bye. Thank you. All right, so we are now in our last hour, and yes, I know there have been some people that have said, I don't know if this thing is actually transmitting, but we have viewers that are popping in every once in a while, and they couldn't do that if it wasn't live and working. We're talking now with Forbes West. He's been on the show as a frequent flyer, and we appreciate that. So for those who are new to this, and I know that I picked up a lot of new viewers as of recent, tell us about the genre that you create in, and give us a little bit of a substance about who Forbes West is as a creative.
Well, thank you for having me back on the show. It's really fun to be back on again. I always enjoy being with you guys. And, well, my thing pretty much is mostly science fiction, mostly in the post-apocalyptic or semi-post-apocalyptic subgenre.
When you go to create in apocalyptic work, what is it that you initially have to do to be able to say, okay, we're going to take this particular ride into this issue, and we're going to bring as much realism as we possibly can? What is it that you do? Do you immerse yourself in the genre, or do you pull yourself away and allow for your own private voice to come out?
You know, that's a really good question. Actually, I think for the most part, I always try to get more of a private voice, so to speak. I mean, that's a good way to put it. I try to steer in that direction. A lot of times I feel like when I'm reading other works in the genre or in the subgenre, lots of times what I've been noticing is that people are really way too influenced by things that are popular right now. So for example, you know, if you read a zombie book, you can see a lot of the influences from like The Walking Dead, or, you know, Night of the Living Dead, for instance, which has been done, you know, multiple times since the beginning, you know, when it first was shown back in, I don't know what, 67, 69, something like that. So it seems that I think a lot of times when people are trying to write in this field, they just really try to want to copy what was done before. That they're really just regurgitating a lot of what happened before. They're going to use the same kind of characters. They're going to see same kind of tropes, same kind of situations, plot lines, subplots, stuff like that. Right. And I try to, for the most part, steer away from that. I try to look into different genres to get ideas from. You know, I kind of, for example, when I was writing my book, Medium Talent, which Stitched Smile Publications is going to be so nice to be publishing.
No kidding! Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that looks like it's going to be coming out. I don't have an exact date, but again, that's thanks to Lisa and everyone, all the hard work in there. So
I had absolutely no idea. When did you sneak that in on me?
No, that was actually something I talked to Lisa a while back. It actually had been published before. It would have been published through the Wonderment Media, which was Apocalypse Weird Stuff, and I think I talked to you before about that.
Yeah.
So Lisa was nice enough to pick that up again, and again, that's being put together as we speak. And thank you very much. And so the thing is, when I was writing that book, I looked to different movies. I looked to like The Sopranos. I looked to, I read like old Hemingway stuff, especially since the book is set in Key West. So of course, you know, Hemingway, that kind of goes hand in hand. And with the old Hemingway stuff, I read To Have or Have Not. So I mean, I kind of just went outside the genre to get ideas. And again, hopefully I didn't regurgitate too much. I mean, some of it was an homage, you know, again, to the Hemingway books and the time travel books. And even though the zombie apocalypse is such a huge part of that whole story, I try to stay away from watching, you know, Land of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead. I try to stay away from, again, all the Walking Dead comics I read about a few years back. And just kind of just use those ideas. Try to get outside of the comfort zone. I think a lot of times people just want to like kind of do a paint by numbers scheme when they're doing writing.
It becomes epically boring, and it shows itself right away within the first 5 pages that they are trying to regurgitate something that has just been so done to death. And we've had some people come in and talk about the fact that they think that particular genre is dying out because there is nothing creatively new. And I'm thinking, no, I know there's a number of authors out there that are creating in this genre that have some fresh ideas, and they're not allowing themselves to be commercialized. I hate that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that's definitely the case. That seems to be also the case for, unfortunately, not just like the zombie genre. It seems like that's a case for superhero genres. It seems like that's a case for just a lot of stuff out there. Most of the time, it's just kind of a follow the leader effect, you know, where one show comes out and really makes a big splash, and then like, you know, everyone wants to be, for example, going back to, you know, my own little research, like I used to watch like old Sopranos episodes. And when Sopranos came out back in '99, that was a huge thing. That was, you know, something that people had never really seen before, especially the way it was shot, the storylines, the acting, the use of music. I mean, the whole nine yards. And then all these other shows that kind of came and went that most of us have pretty much forgotten since then, basically try to regurgitate Sopranos-esque styles in a certain way. You know, it's kind of like in the mid-90s too. You had Pulp Fiction come out, and then all these wannabe Pulp Fiction films started hitting left and right. And there's like none of them were actually really good. I think the only one that was actually interesting was like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, for instance. But most of the time, that's what's happening. And zombie stuff is really almost ridiculous about that, because again, like you said, it is really boring. If you're interested and you're a fan, and I assume Zombie Palooza is probably a pretty big fan of zombie stuff. Well, I might just go on a limb there. You're gonna see them. You're gonna see that all over the place, and you're gonna get bored instantly. And especially if you're, you know, not even I would say a hardcore fan. I just say if you're just kind of just passing through every once in a while, you're gonna notice a lot of the same.
Yeah, you don't want that kind of feeling like been there, done there. If you want to have the experience of being able to walk into something and immerse yourself into the storyline, especially if it's a series, you need to be able to have something that you can connectively relate to. If it's not there, you're going to look at that and go, meh. Now, I mean, you know, everybody knows The Walking Dead. And for what it was when it first originally came out, it was quite a different kind of immersion there. Yeah. But this other show that they had, heck, I don't even remember the name of it right now. Fear the Walking Dead.
Oh yeah. Basically, like really, the spin-off.
I'm like, you know, did you not think that this was going to cause some kind of an issue at some point because of the way that everything is lagging, or there's not enough background information, or you just got stuck in this particular mindset where you think that, oh, we put zombies in there, or the idea of zombies, and they're going to love it and eat it up. That's not how this works.
No, I mean, I think that a lot of time it's regurgitation, plus the fact that I don't think they're really trying awfully that hard. I think a lot of times, especially in Hollywood, they're not, you know, there's a real kind of weird elitism when it comes to Hollywood stuff. And it has nothing to do with like left-right kind of things. I think it's just kind of like a snobbery that goes on that like, for certain genres, they don't get the kind of respect most of the time than they should.
Right.
You know, you don't think they can do much more with it. Like a zombie one, it's like it's got to be confined to the usual, you know, zombies attack, people run away, someone gets eaten, they hole up somewhere, you know, they try to figure a way out, they try to escape, blah, blah, blah. It's always the same kind of stuff. And because most of the time Hollywood, I think, just doesn't respect it too much, and they don't throw too much effort into the writing, and they think they can just get away with it, you know? It's like
well, you know, I was talking earlier about the horror genre and the whole idea of when people create in this that there's still a big group of people that think that horror is not literature. It can never be considered literature, but really the essence of what horror is the foundation of what literature is.
Yeah, I mean, for example, like Frankenstein, the novel gets put around a lot as, you know, a literary classic, as well as it should. And, you know, also Bram Stoker's Dracula at the same time, too. And these are, you know, again, the pioneers. I mean, Frankenstein, you could basically say is the invention of science fiction. That's basically maybe one of the first science fiction novels out there, besides being a sci-fi kind of horror setup. Same thing with Bram Stoker's Dracula. And these are two horror settings, but people, for some reason, it's because I guess it's so far in the past, they attribute that to being literature. But anything that comes after Frankenstein and Dracula somehow is not a part of literature, and it can never be. And it's just like pop culture schlock kind of stuff. And I totally have to disagree with that, because Salem's Lot is a book that scared the hell out of me when I read it a while back.
That's an amazing book. The concept and everything was just deep.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, Salem's Lot then and Salem's Lot still now doesn't get a lot of the respect that it should, because Salem's Lot, you know, again, has the vampire element, and it's about the vampires taking over the town of Salem's Lot. And, you know, we basically all know the story. I don't think we can put a spoilers alert for a book that's been out since the 70s, but, you know, it takes over the town. You know, basically a Dracula figure shows up, and, you know, shenanigans happens. But the real thing is that it's more about the characters in the town. It's also more about the feelings of a small town. It's also really captures the time and place of a small town in the mid-70s that's not functioning well, that's basically falling apart. The good times are gone. You know, the heyday of like the 50s and growing up in that kind of Stand By Me little, you know, golden era, that's all done with. You know, the town's mostly full of alcoholics and, you know, people who are just not getting ahead in life and who are just falling apart. And that's explained and revealed in chapter after chapter when they have these little, you know, running subplots throughout the entire book. The entire book is not just about, like, you know, one character having to fight this Dracula creature that shows up in his town. It's really about, again, the archetypes of a small town in the mid-1970s. And it really does hit home because, again, there's a lot of hopelessness, despair, alcoholism. You know, this is right after the Vietnam War. So America, you know, is kind of like on its last legs at that moment. You know, there's a lot of feeling that the country is not doing well. And even Stephen King, he wrote in the introduction that I read, talked about how Salem's Lot was, in a way, him trying to deal with Watergate and the post-Vietnam America of the 70s. Because he grew up in the 1950s when, again, that Stand By Me, golden era kind of stuff was going on. And then to see this, you know, sharp decline and, you know, kind of fall, he was trying to explain that, but he explained that in a fun way, and he included vampires so that anyone walking into the book can have fun with it. But again, you can go back to that book and actually really dissect it for a while and realize that, gee, he's talking about small town America, and that's like something that a lot of books in the, you know, so-called literary field, you know, that's something that they would want to tackle, and sometimes it didn't, sometimes it didn't, and Stephen King took it head on, and it's a beautiful, great, horrific, terrifying, interesting, funny book. But again, because he had vampires in it, you know, no one wants to listen to it. But who knows, maybe in about, you know, in 2070s or something like that, people will go back and go, you know what, that actually captures something.
a lot of what people deem as horror, say 20, 30 years ago, that it has a lot to do with the basis of what was going on in society at that point, and or world viewpoints about particular issues, and they used the vehicle of horror to be able to convey what their viewpoints were. It's not changed. It's the same kind of thing that's going on now. It's just that you need to be more precise, more glued into what the real piece of horror is within whatever that concept is.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think that, a lot of times if you want to get something good out, you're really talking about something deeper than what the story is. Science fiction is really good for that, because science fiction can allow you to discuss certain issues without, hitting it dead on.
Right.
Like take, for example, if I wrote a book talking about, police brutality in the United States, no matter what I said about the subject or how I try to explain it, or how we went about, characters as police officers, for example, or try to humanize them, the debate would get so intense and so fast, whichever side I took about it, that
you'd be wrong.
Yeah, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no matter what, there would be always one half of the virtual lynch mob would be ready to kind of take you out over it. But if you did it in a sci-fi setting and you kind of disguise certain features of what you're talking about, so that, the reader with, an IQ that's above room temperature can kind of figure it out, you can kind of get your same point across without, hitting direct fire, so to speak. And I think that horror, again, to be interesting and something that sticks in your mind, has to go a little bit deeper than the kind of usual, like the Eli Roth, kind of like, it's kind of like the gore porn kind of stuff. It's like, the Hostel is like pretty much is just someone getting tortured and ripped apart, and there's no subtlety, there's no story, there's no characters.
Right.
It's pretty much, people getting tortured to death, and that's like 2 hours. Or not
You
even
go,
2 hours.
you go and you watch films that are like that. You don't go for the substance of the story. What you go for is the special effects and the graphicness of what is happening in front of you. I went to a horror convention a couple of weeks ago, and I saw different kinds of films. One that was like only 1 minute and 11 seconds long, up to full feature length films, and you can get the essence of what they're trying to convey through these characters, through the music, through the sounds and all that. But when you're writing in a book, you need to be able to have things that are going to appeal to all of your senses, but not like so graphically loud that you feel like you just went 15 rounds with Tyson for about an hour and 20 minutes, or however long it takes you to devour that particular section or book.
That's totally true. I mean, it's just because I think it's kind of like, if you're composing music, right? And if you keep hitting the same note over and over and over again, that's going to get tedious and repetitive and boring. I mean, again, like some of the greatest, horror movies have moments of either levity or fun or atmosphere or, something more than just continuous, carnage. Like
Right.
one of my favorite horror films is Jaws. Steven Spielberg's Jaws, the original Jaws. The original Jaws has, pretty defined characters. It's well shot. There's moments of, not comedy, but I mean, it's like levity, it's not like the same thing over and over again. There's some humanity behind it. There's, actual real characters giving real speeches, and you don't really see that too much in a lot of horror films. Like you said, it's just like pretty much you're seeing the special effects. You're watching for the special effects, especially if you're writing in books. I mean, there's some people that I know personally that can read books that are just pretty much, it's pretty much the Eli Roth version again. It's pretty much, just reading about people getting chopped up left and right and how horrible and visceral that is. But I think that, horror deserves to be much more well-rounded, because I think that makes it even more horrific. if it is. You know, if you got paper mache characters running around getting chopped up, I don't feel a thing.
There's no development. There's no timing in it. There's no forethought of thinking what the person is that's going to be consuming what you just put out there. There's none of that. And if you want to do that, then, you know, fine, I'm not going to stop you. But if you want to write and be able to become glued into a fan base or into a niche where people enjoy that kind of work, you're going to have to invest yourself. You're going to have to put some time into doing it where these people are going to say, yeah, this is quality work. I mean, it might not be amazing work, but at least you took the time to get a good 9/10 of it right.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to put some effort into it. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like a lot of people like to put a lot of effort into things nowadays. It seems like everyone's kind of going for the quick return, and that kind of almost brings us full circle back to, you know, talking about Fear the Walking Dead, and talking about like how many times you go into, you know, you read a zombie comic or you read a zombie book or you read, like, you know, or you watch something zombie-ish, and most of the time it's the same crap you've seen a million times in different packaging and maybe different actors. But I mean, yeah, I think it's just that if you really want to get into deep horror, like if you really want to scare people, I think that you really have to create more of an atmosphere and more characterization. Hopefully I did that with Medium Talent, and there's a sequel to it too, Bad Dream Man. Hopefully I did that with that because I want to make sure that it seemed like there was a sense of reality to it instead of just, like, again, repetitive motion over and over again. That's
all right, so let's go over to Bad Dream Man, and what I want to know first is what was going through your life when you initially got the concept to do this piece.
Well, the piece Bad Dream Man is a sequel to Medium Talent. So what I was going through at the time was that, you know, I got kind of a creepy, weird Key West obsession. I'll be honest. Like, I do really think that town is pretty neat in a lot of ways. I know a lot of people don't, and they probably have extremely valid reasons to say that. But I just think it's a very interesting place, and I just always thought that, you know, you don't really. At first, it came across that, like, you don't really see zombies in any kind of Caribbean tropic setting. You know, most of the time it's. I mean, I don't know of anything offhand. Most of the time you see it in just, you know, usually kind of the same places like Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania, you know, rural Georgia, that kind of stuff. So it always seems like, you know, people walking in the woods and there's a wooded townhouse and they got to defend against zombies, you know, because everyone basically took a page from Romero's, you know, Night of the Living Dead stuff. And so I wanted to kind of showcase it in just a slightly different way. One, and that's not the whole point, is to like throw into the tropics. The other point is too is that Key West, people down there are pretty different, and the kind of characters you get in the Key West setting, the kind of personalities, so to speak, are a bit different than the kind of personalities you get again in the Pennsylvania or in the Georgia. So I want to kind of play with that more. And I also, Key West is a very small town setting, even though it's like right at the end of the Keys. You know, it's not that big of a town. I think it's like about 20,000 people, even though kind of a lot of people know it because, again, people do the Miami to Key West run. They go through the Florida Keys and all that. And so I kind of thought, you know, you got a quirky, different, you know, town that's been historically around for a very, very long time down at the edge of Florida. That's been connected to piracy for years. I mean, that was one of the things that I can't tell you about, that, you know, officially it wasn't called piracy, it was called wrecking down there. And wreckers were, there's a great reef around the entire area. And back in those days, like in the 1800s, ships coming in off the Atlantic and the Gulf used to run aground all the time. Left and right. They never bothered to put in a lighthouse, which kind of should give you a hint that they weren't that interested in really helping people. But they weren't technically pirates because it was actually under legal coding, meaning that if a ship wrecked, they got to rob the ship, but they couldn't harm the passengers. The only duty that they had was to bring the passengers off the wrecked ship. So it's a little bit different. So it wasn't like pirates in the sense of, you know, killing one and, you know, steal their stuff. It was pretty much, you got to rescue them, but all the stuff that they have is pretty much your property now because you saved their lives. So that's how they operate for a long time, and that's how what Key West's whole weird background is. And of course, Ernest Hemingway lived down there for about 10 years. It's about 99 miles from Cuba. So I mean, there's a different setting, and I wanted to have this horrible abominations and zombies and all this kind of stuff kind of drift through this quirky town at the end of the world. And I think that kind of sets up a different atmosphere than you see in a lot of other books.
Uniquely different, because I think of all the authors that I've had on that strictly write in Zompok, as I call it, I don't think I've had anybody that has taken that particular perspective. And so it's refreshing to be able to get a glimpse of how history and the idea of an apocalyptic situation happening within a population like that would turn out.
Yeah, because I mean, again, most of the time, just again, because I'm trying to steer from what the usual case is, if 9 times out of 10, a zombie apocalypse movie either happens in at a farmhouse, pretty much types of characters, or it happens in a big city and it's like World War Z, and it's mass hysteria, that kind of stuff, and which is fine. I'm not really just saying that
for each though setting like that, there is a uniquely interesting take on it, but it can't have for us now looking at this, because that's already been done. Show me something that hasn't been done and allow me to be able to take a different kind of ride, kind of sort of like going into an amusement park and experiencing that brand new roller coaster.
Yeah, that's the way I always thought about it. I mean, again, I can't say myself is good or bad because obviously I'm a bit biased. I think it's good. But the thing is that when so much stuff is out there and so much stuff has been done before, and there's nothing really new under the sun, and I understand that, you can only be so original up to a point. But it seems that a lot of times people just kind of, again, go right back to the old ways because I think they're playing it pretty safe. They just want to hit the same notes because they're afraid that, they go off in one little direction, try something new, that it's going to backfire and everyone's going to hate their book.
Right.
Which is, understandable. I mean, again, but it also, you got to try to do something just a bit different because, even the most average, American out there who barely reads, barely, does anything except watch, pop culture TV shows, knows most of the tricks in the trade. They know exactly what one character is going to do, what character is like, So you got to change it up a bit. I mean, it's like when I was watching, and I actually really like this one a lot, Dawn of the Dead, the remake, the 2004 Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, the one with the 3D thing?
No, this was like one that had like Ving Rhames. It came out a while ago. It was it's just Dawn of the Dead, but it's like the brand new updated version.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, this was really good. And one of the things that I liked was that pretty much until this point, every time I saw a zombie film, it was always the slow shuffling zombies. It's
Right.
like the little the typical Romero type. But these ones were crazy. They would be running at like full tilt, and like ripping people apart. And it's just, just little changes here and there I noticed throughout the movie made it like, okay, then we're trying something new. I'm not totally watching something regurgitate, which I was totally prepared to do because it was a Dawn of the Dead remake. So I wasn't expecting, freaking Shakespeare to be coming across the screen. I knew what I was getting into, but they made certain changes that were good. But then, of course, sometimes they fell back, about halfway into the story. You already know who the good guy character really is. You already know who's going to be the jerk, coward guy who's going to screw him over in some way, so not that crazy out there. But I mean, it was trying at least. And I think that's, as an author, your first rule when you're writing should be you should try. You should try something different, People don't.
Yeah, but then you get into that pool of people that say, and boy, did I run into that one, that the only zombie that is authentically correct is the one that came out of Romero's stuff, and I'm looking at that, and I have now a pretty broad range of what apocalyptic fiction is, and especially when it comes into the line of zombies. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, well, that's very interesting, but I have a question for you. And of course, they go, what? And I said, well, he didn't create zombies, he created ghouls. And he didn't even create those. He got the idea from ghouls from something else. And so the idea, to me, thinking that he is the father of zombies is it doesn't fly with me. I do not agree about that. Sorry, guys. People that go and say, though, that you can only write or create on film zombies that are shambling, and that there's no way it possibly could be fast or quick, don't know a lot about anatomy. The body decomposes at a particular rate. And it depends on the environment. If it's humid all the time, or if it is hot and dry, or if it is wet or cold. All of that kind of stuff comes into consideration. And there, yes, you can get these fast zombies.
Yeah, I know there's like certain groups of people that have, very strange distinctions that they want to make amongst themselves. One of the things I always thought was interesting was that in this Sasquatch community, the people who go hunt down Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And they have a thing where there's a strict half of the community believes that if you were ever to find Bigfoot, first thing you got to do is open fire and kill Bigfoot. You got to gun down Bigfoot, because that's the only way you're going to have proof if there's ever was a Bigfoot. Then you got to kill the thing outright. You basically got to show up, with the thing strapped to your car hood, drive down to the police station, call CNN, and that's the only way you're ever going to prove this thing dead to rights, so to speak. And then the other half is actually vehemently against it. And the other half believes that, no, that first off, you don't exactly know even what Bigfoot is. Bigfoot could be a human intelligent creature, right? Bigfoot could be, maybe some kind of, distant relation of a human being. That could be murder, if you just gun down something like that, and they have this whole, weird back and forth. And I always was of the opinion that, well, I don't even know if it's real. I don't even know I don't even know what we're talking about. I don't know why everyone is getting excited. When we get to the situation as it is, and I discovered a Bigfoot by accident, I'll make the call then. But, they have these online group fights over these kind of details, and sometimes this blows my mind. And with zombie stuff, that's the whole thing too. Why can't a zombie run? Why can't a zombie do this? And also, zombies technically are a Haitian thing, and most in zombies.
Yes. Hello, white zombie, yo.
Yeah, well, that stuff, and then the fact that zombies too, once upon a time, I think to have a proper zombie, you need a wizard, right, to control them. That was one of the things too. That actually, that I think that's even why Romero started calling his zombies ghouls, or what they were considered ghouls, was because they didn't have that whole evil wizard thing, or shaman, or whatever you want to call it, Haitian voodoo priest, controlling things behind the scenes. So, people get into these weird definitions about what is certain things in fiction, and fiction is fiction. Fiction, you can go any which way you want, and as long as it's an entertaining story, it's completely fine. Once you get into this really geeky, and I won't say nerdy, because nerdy is a good term now, but I would say really geeky kind of stuff where you're just gonna just nitpick on certain things. For example, Star Trek is another one too. There's a lot of people out there who are upset at the new Star Trek movies because it's too action oriented, and it's too, they said basically it's Fast and the Furious in space. And one part of me kind of understands their argument, because they're saying that it's not true Star Trek stories, that, it's kind of missing some of the really key points of Star Trek. Again, it was Roddenberry's vision of a utopia future. There's a whole thing about that Roddenberry wanted to showcase, human beings at a, pretty much at an evolved level. And that all the Star Trek movies, the new ones anyway, completely screwed that up, and this is action films and blah blah blah. And yeah, I mean, it's just like you can go in that direction and say it's like, yeah, it's actually losing the point of Star Trek, or you could just say, can we just judge the film on its own? And yeah, it's got Star Trek stuff in it and Star Trek characters, and can it be just its own thing, and we can just take the movie on its own merit? I mean,
I don't know where we stepped off trying to figure out, how to tear the thing apart before you even get to it to be able to see if it has any kind of quality or substance to it. Or, I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to have that. It just has to be entertaining. Why?
Right. It has to be a good product. It's just Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull sucked not because Indiana Jones was dealing with aliens in the movie. Sorry, spoiler alert for something that came out more than a few years ago. Crystal Skull was not, a bad movie because he's dealing with aliens, which makes it more sci-fi as opposed to, the other films, which were much more kind of paranormal-ish, Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Last Crusade, all that kind of stuff. It was much more in the paranormal, supernatural realm of stuff when it got into it. So him dealing with the sci-fi angle all of a sudden didn't make that movie terrible. What made that movie terrible was his asinine writing. For example, like Indiana Jones survives a nuclear weapon by hiding in a refrigerator. And that kind of crap like that. That's what made it a terrible film. Not because they tweaked around the genre. Not because of anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, people get into these kind of little stickler things, and, I just don't get it, especially when it's fiction. We're not talking theology here. We're not talking about, the latest translation of the Bible. This is not something that – but people do launch crusades, and I think people just love to be sectarian about certain things, And
it's fine. I mean, if you want to be a part of a particular group that believes certain elements either must absolutely be into it, whatever the piece is, without any doubt, then fine. That's your idea of what that's supposed to be. But then, there are other sections of people that, pick different kinds of elements out of it that they find useful. Here's a big, huge thing. Why do you have to make everything an us, not us? Why can't you just look at it on the whole? Now, I had a problem when I first started trying to bring in horror about, I don't know, about 6-7 months ago. And I was getting people going, well, your show is Zombie Palooza Radio, and that's really not horror, and you're messing with a situation that you know nothing about, and basically, how dare you? And then I dealt with a lot of people who were like, no, I don't want to do this, and then there were other people that were like, hey, let's get past the name of the show and see if she can actually do an interview that is cohesive and coherent. And here we are.
Yeah, I think this is a cultural commentary at the moment. I think everyone in every group, and this is white liberals and conservatives and minorities and all these other groups, and pretty much every group in the country is guilty of this because we're all human. I think everyone is into this really kind of like something to be a snob about. Let's put it that way. Everyone's like got something that they're just a little bit snobbish about, and it's kind of like just a way of like almost like having like a mean way of fun,
Yes.
Because and it will be in random like things too. One of you can be on a people level, it's like again like out and out racism. That's kind of disappeared in this country. I would say racism is still here, but out and out racism, like, old 1950s, deep South kind of stuff, that's all gone. The kind of like the little needling stuff that people judge people on, perfect example is beer. Back in like about 20-30 years ago, just because we had no freaking options when it came to beer, everyone was Budweiser, Bud Light, and then whatever, like, PBR, Busch. That was pretty much what you got. And,
whatever, and that was all we had.
Right.
And then craft beers came out, and craft beers, had so many different kinds, and plus we got so many of the imports now. For example, you can get Japanese, German, Hefeweizens, the stouts, imperial ales, stouts, whatever. And all of a sudden, I noticed like people started drifting into having a very distinct taste for certain beers, and then they would be judgmental about what kind of beer you got.
Yes.
And I, I'm not a beer guy either. I don't drink beer at all. I drink everything else but beer. And when it comes to beer, like I drink like a redneck. I drink Busch. I drink like PBR. I drink like the really, quote unquote, old, old good old boys kind of beer. Like I really drink nothing that could be considered craft or special or anything like that. And I get like a loose amount of crap for that sometimes, and that's fine. I never really care because it doesn't really hurt my feelings or anything. And I'm a grown adult. I'm not going to be put off by that. But I just noticed it's like, yeah, some people just kind of judge you what kind of beer you want. It's like, what kind of beer you want? I want PBR. Oh, you drink PBR? It's like, yeah, okay, I'll have a PBR. Who cares? But then I'm a snob too, because then I get judgmental about like whiskeys, for example.
Okay.
For example, Jim Beam, which is, fine one, it's been around forever, Jack Daniels. I noticed myself the other day, I caught myself giving someone else crap for drinking it. And I was like, but why am I doing this? Like, of course, I was like about 5 drinks deep, so, but I mean, it's like, why am I really doing that? Why do I care? If you got to pick like a $10, bourbon, that's fine. That's an absolutely fine thing. But like, for whatever reason, like, I think that, and even myself is guilty of this, we always have something we just get a little bit snobbish on. And, again, when it comes to like, what are real zombies? Well, don't you know what real zombies are? Don't you know what real horror is? How can you have horror writers on if it's a zombie show? I think it's just that we're bored in this country. I honestly do. I don't know. It's just, we need like a civil war or a world war or something to get people moving again. Because honestly, we seem to just get so easily bored and so like this like to snipe at each other.
There's too many choices. There's too many different kinds of things that can separate and make that us not us group. And I laugh so much about I laugh so much about the beer stuff because now my grandfather used to drink Pabst Blue Ribbon, and he enjoyed that, and he smoked Pall Mall Reds or that Pall Mall cigarette thingy, and he had a particular that was his that was his thing. But he was a coal miner, and there was a particular kind of lifestyle, I guess, that went behind those particular brands. It was just kind of odd. For me, I would not drink that beer. I wouldn't drink the beer you drink. I just wouldn't do that. And my snobbishness is about beer, but I also enjoy I like I like tequila, but I don't like the low end tequila. I like the very high end tequila because it has it's got a smoother essence to it. It is something that I want to savor and enjoy as I drink the drink, not just belt it down.
Right.
And that goes along too with how I like my creative work. I want something that, for me, I like history. I like that someone can take an element of history and run a storyline through it and allow me to get so involved in it that I stop reading the book. I circle stuff. I go and I research it. Sometimes even in the course of me reading the book, I want to know more about what they're talking about to see if, in fact, the detail is as connected as what they're showing. And then I'll go and I'll continue to read the book. But I also feel like I'm getting some extra out of it. And I like that. I will watch a film based on that snobbery of seeing. I mean, if there's elements in there that you actually took the time, and I have to actually think about what you're doing, because if my brain's not engaged in that intellectual thing going on, I turn off like that. It's and I go, who writes this crap? I don't get
Yeah.
it. You got paid to do that? What?
Yeah, because I'm like the same way too. If I'm in the middle of something and I'm not engaged mentally, I fall asleep anywhere. So I just completely just. But I have a self defense mechanism where I can just fall asleep and like at the drop of a dime, really. Because anytime it gets a little bit boring, or I just kind of already know where the story's going, my brain's just like, okay, you're out.
Yeah, it's done. There is no level of interest. Now, if I just want to be purely entertained, then I'll slap something in there, and I'll look at the thing and go, okay, I want to laugh. I want to be entertained. Brain
Yeah.
candy is what I want. And there
It's like
are,
mindless that you just want to watch for a while. Like I watch all the time. Not that it's mindless. It's not a bad show, but Monk, for instance,
oh
right?
yeah.
I like the show Monk a lot. But also, Monk is not really that challenging for me. It's not really like I'm really deep into Monk. I'm not like I can turn on Monk all the time and have that as background noise.
Yes.
And it's just like it's one of these things that it's just kind of like I can just flow along with that. But yeah, when people, I mean, it's like we can say like we're kind of snobby about like how we want certain movies or certain books to read and stuff like that. But I don't think you or me really goes out of our way sometimes to really express that because if someone else has got their own thing, they got their own thing. That's fine. But I think like what you run into, and I think this is something that's like really dogged the hell out of Stephen King's career, is that there is a really practiced upon snobbery going around when it comes to certain genres like horror and zombies.
Yeah, there is. And I don't think I've ever actually touched on that particular subject in all the time that I've done this show. Quite like this evening. It is something that causes people to either want to be more emotionally connected into whatever the level of apocalyptic work is or horror work, and every once in a while you're going to find somebody that's got a particular belief where it has to be this particular way or it doesn't fit into the genre. Now, hold up 20 seconds here. This is all fiction of one course or another. And what you are hoping is that for the most part, what you're putting on those pages or up on the screen never happens.
Yeah, well, first off, yeah, you don't want anything to happen to people. Like in my sort of medium talent, there's a great storm that wipes out a lot of the world, and then the survivors have to deal with, the undead. And I don't wish that upon anyone. I don't think that's a nice scenario to live through. Even though we always get that kind of, I'm sure you're kind of the same way too about this again, like a lot of people out there. Sometimes you entertain like, a fantasy of survival horror, zombies, like what we would do in a zombie apocalypse kind of thing. But I don't think any of us really want to go through that. This is kind of fun mental games kind of stuff. But I mean, if you're gonna, I understand why you need somewhat of a boundary when it comes to certain genres. Now, you hear me out. It's not like it's a really hard boundary around anything, but there has to be some kind of loose context. Now, the only reason why I would say that is not because of the art itself, but because of the fact that if you're trying to present something to others, and especially if you're trying to sell to others, marketing wise, you do have to have some kind of loose connection between it. Because if you got it so mixed up with so many different genres, again, it's going to be a little bit hard for your publisher, or again, which is becoming more and more common yourself, to actually go out there and publish, and people don't know what kind of story they're getting into.
Well, here's part of the problem, though. Now, I have been running into a handful of people who are getting to that point where they don't know what to call what they created and how to put it into a particular genre. Well, if you're going to be doing it and wanting to sell the work, you have to be aware of what it is you're writing and to whom you're writing it to. If you lose that and you get into the situation where you've got more genres in there than you know what to do with, and that your person that's supposed to be editing the book or better reading your book is going, I don't know what the heck this is. Maybe not necessarily be bad, but it's just not genre specific. It's going to be a big issue.
Well, it's almost that you have to take the kind of Hollywood way out. And what I mean by that is that when Hollywood gets a film from a director, and they look at it and they go, "Well, how the hell do we sell this thing?" Right? They emphasize certain different parts of the film more than probably is, I wouldn't say factual, but maybe necessary. And I'm not saying you should lie, but what I'm saying is that, if you're going to be out there selling and you're trying to get people into your story's universe, you're going to have to emphasize certain parts.
Right.
That, people are going to be interested in, especially when you got the cover and when you're describing it. Drive, the film Drive is a really good example of that. There was a woman, Drive, the 2011 movie came out with Ryan Gosling. He's the getaway driver.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great film. But when it's presented in trailers and when it was, marketed out there, it was made as just a pure, getaway driver film. That you know exactly what you're getting into. It's just only going to be car chase after car chase after car chase. It's going to be pretty much like, it looked like a upper class Fast and the Furious by the trailers. And that's not untrue, but
it's not what it was.
Not really what it was at all. It was actually a hell of a lot deeper than that, and they had real characters and storyline. And there's only, I think, 2 car chases, and even the ending doesn't have a car chase. And I remember there was a woman out there who sued over it, and she tried to sue the film production company over it for false advertising. So I guess the long story short is that you got to emphasize certain things if you're going to be so mixed up with the genres, but at the same time, too, you got to have to know what you're going for. You got to have at least a kind of direction, because I think that's in all fairness to your reader as well. Because if I'm going to read, about a vampire is destroying a small town, let's say, I don't want to just find out that, 3/4 of the book is a love story that has nothing to do with vampires.
Right. I'm going to be kind of ticked off about that.
Yeah, you just kind of shoved it in there. So,
Right.
There's a fine line that I can't possibly explain to you, or to anyone, because no one knows really where that fine line is. But you kind of have to go towards that and have just enough of, it's based in some sort of genre. Something's going on there that people can relate to.
Absolutely. All right. So we're at that point where I want to get you to put your social media links out there and all of that fun stuff.
Sure. You can find me on Facebook, Forbes West, also on Twitter, Forbes West, and ForbesWestBooks.com. There's my website, ForbesWestBooks.com, and you can find out all about the books I put out there, what I'm working on, my own little podcast I got going on, Live at the Bembo Inn, ended about a month or so ago, so we're trying to start up a new season. Thank you. And also about short films I've done too, On the Border, and just projects and what's going on right now. So please check it out, ForbesWestBooks.com.
All right, thank you so much. Check out Medium Talent and Bad Dream Man, which is the latest installment, sometime soon, like right now, or
hopefully so.
tomorrow.
We'll have to talk to Lisa.
make sure that you go and you leave the reviews if in fact you go to pick up these works, and they're very well worth putting that couple of bucks down there to be able to see what's going on in Forbes West mind. Boy, I'm tired. All right. I know. I you did a great job. I liked the questions, and I liked the way that this evolved for you, because we have had you on a number of times, and I wanted to make sure that this time it would be something that would be different. And in fact, we did get that from you. So thank you so much for doing that and being a part of the show. I'm hoping that everything has recorded and it's done what it's supposed to do, despite some of the people that have been calling in going, we can't see this right now. So hopefully it'll get all logged up and you'll be able to watch it and pass the links around and all of that. Thank you, Forbes West. It's been a pleasure.
And can I just say one last thing?
Oh, yeah.
I just want to point out something. This is the first conversation we've had. We haven't had a dropped call. I don't know what that means. That's some good luck coming our way, but everything has worked this 100%. And if anyone goes back to the previous episodes, that has never, ever, ever, ever happened. So that is the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And on that note, good night from Zombie Cruiser Radio. Like and share, with the all of this, with that down there. Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye.